Chapter 1152. The commotion was so great that all the practitioners in the area were alarmed. Moreover, many practitioners were rushing over from different areas. To Lin Sun's surprise, Wu Lingfei, the seventh prince of Golden Crow, hadn't shown up yet. Moreover, only a few of the Golden Crows were at the top of the reincarnation developing realm, while the rest were only at the top of the reincarnation developing realm. This kind of power was far from threatening Lin Sun. Where is Wu Lingfei? Lin Sun's black eyes swept over those Golden Crow experts like lightning. Demon Lin, you've gone too far. These people looked sad and indignant, but no one dared to rush over because the disparity in strength was too great. Lin Sun didn't want to talk nonsense. He rushed forward and suppressed all these Golden Crow experts in a few breaths. They were lying on the ground in disorder. Just as Lin Sun was about to enter the palace, a cold voice suddenly rang out in the distance. Demon Lin, killing is forbidden in the city. You're trampling on the rules. It was a group of people dressed in the clothes of the descendants of the Beast Mountain. The one who spoke was a young man with gray hair at his temples. The others trembled and hurriedly left the area. Obviously, Demon Lin's action of breaking the rules in the city had aroused the disgust of the ancient orthodoxy like the Beast Mountain. Lin Sun suddenly turned around and said with a cold smile, I haven't settled the score with you, but you jumped out yourself. Why? Do you want to stand up for the Golden Crow branch? He would never forget how domineering the people of the Beast Mountain had been on the way to the City of Guidance. They had seen him, Alu, and Old Toad as obstacles and wanted to trample on them. You're wrong. We're just defending the rules of the city. If you stop now, we can give you a chance to repent. Otherwise, I'm afraid all the practitioners in the city won't allow you to go on like this. The young man with gray hair at his temples said coldly. His name was Lu Chuan, a top talent who had been famous for a long time. As they spoke, they came over with great momentum. There were more than a dozen of them, and their auras were extremely powerful and extraordinary. Yes, the rules are the rules. Even the top giants can't break them. A cold voice sounded. Another group of practitioners walked out aggressively and looked at Lin Sun with unkind eyes. The successor of the Xuandu Dao sect. The crowd became restless as they recognized the identity of the newcomers. The leader was a skinny and tall young man in a scholarly robe. His name was Gao Xian, and he was a peerless figure among the younger generation of the Xuandu Dao sect. You're from the same sect as that vicious bitch, Ling Hua? Asked Lin Sun. The faces of Gao Xian and the others sank. Fairy Ling Hua was an ancient freak of their sect, yet she was insulted in such a manner. This made them all furious. Fiend God Lin, do you really plan on becoming enemies with all the cultivators in the city? Gao Xian said coldly. Lin Sun sneered. Who gave you the courage to represent all the cultivators in the city? Do you deserve it? If you have the guts, try and block me. As he spoke, he turned around and walked towards the hall. From the beginning to the end, he did not reveal any trace of fear. This caused the cultivators of the myriad Beast Spirit Mountain and Xuandu Dao sect to have extremely ugly expressions, and they gnashed their teeth with hatred. This fiend God Lin is simply too arrogant. Everyone in the distance secretly clicked their tongues. In the past, they knew that fiend God Lin was courageous, but they never expected him to be this bold. What did it mean to turn a blind eye to others? That was it. After saying that, he turned around and left, treating the crowd as if they were nothing. Oh no, the treasures of heaven and earth gathered for the seventh prince are still in the hall. Suddenly, an expert of the Golden Crow clan who had been beaten to the ground screamed and got up, rushing into the hall. The other experts of the Golden Crow clan who were lying on the ground could no longer play dead. Their expressions changed drastically as they rushed into the hall in a panic. The cultivators in the distance could not help but be stunned when they saw this scene. If they were not afraid of the ferocious power of the Golden Crow clan, they would also want to rush in and plunder the treasures. Even if Fiend God Lin ate the meat, they could drink the soup. In the past few days, the Golden Crow clan had used various means to gather a large number of treasures, all of which were rare treasures of first-rate quality. There was no lack of king medicines, all of which were prepared for the seventh prince of the Golden Crow clan, Wu Lingfei. This was enough to make anyone drool and green with envy. Fiend god Lin is going to make a fortune, many cultivators muttered in their hearts. Even the cultivators of the myriad Bee Spirit Mountain and Xuandu Dao sect were tempted. They struggled in their hearts. Should they go in and stop Fiend god Lin's evil deeds? But in the end, they held back. The hall was the territory of the Golden Crow clan. If they entered rashly, it would be no different from trespassing on the territory of the Golden Crow clan. Although we can't enter, we could start with Fiend god Lin. At that moment, the same thought emerged in the minds of Lu Chuan of the Myriad Bee Spirit Mountain and Gao Xian of the Xuandu Dao sect. The hall was resplendent with gold and jade. After entering, Lin Sun found that the base camp of the Golden Crow branch was empty. There were only some attendants, not even a master. It seems that Wu Lingfei is indeed not here. Lin Sun made a judgment. Then, he headed straight for the depths of the hall. Along the way, the followers of the Golden Crow clan tried to stop him from time to time, but Lin Sun suppressed them with a raise of his hand. Finally, Lin Sun came in front of a treasure vault. The treasure vault's door was sealed with restrictions. If he used force to break it, it was very likely that the treasures inside would be destroyed. Stop, Fiend god Lin. Do you really want to go against our clan? The Golden Crow clan experts rushed over. All of them were shocked and exasperated. Thud, thud, thud. These people were suppressed by Lin Sun again, just as they rushed over. They fell to the ground and moaned in pain. Open it. Lin Sun pointed at a young man in a gray robe and ordered. The treasures inside are specially prepared for the seventh prince. Whoever touches it will die. The young man in a gray robe said with a trembling voice. Everyone wanted to cry, but had no tears. This was like a nightmare. They were from the Golden Crow clan. Who dared to offend them in the immortal incineration ancient city? But today, not only were they beaten up, they were also planning to rob them. Who would believe it if word got out? If you cooperate, all of you can live. If not, I will destroy this treasure vault and kill all of you. Lin Sun said casually. His figure was elegant and his expression was calm, but his black eyes were surging with coldness. An invisible demonic aura permeated the air, oppressing everyone to the point that they could not breathe. The young man in a gray robe seemed to be too aggrieved that he could not breathe. His eyes rolled back and he fainted. Pretending to faint, Lin Sun was stunned. This guy was a weirdo. However, this was not a problem for Lin Sun. He lifted the young man in a gray robe and slapped him in the face, waking him up directly. His face was swollen and bruised. He howled and finally accepted his fate. Boom! The treasure vault was soon opened. A strong and intoxicating smell of medicine rushed out. There were all kinds of spiritual materials and treasures in the treasure vault. Although there were not many of them, they were all treasures that could only be found by chance. These were all treasures specially prepared for Wu Lingfei, the seventh prince of the Golden Crow clan. Their quality could not be bad. At a glance, Lin Sun found that there were 5 king medicines, all of which were emitting dazzling brilliance. The rich fragrance was ethereal and dazzling, illuminating the whole treasure house. In addition, there was a sealed purple copper jade box. When opened, a mutton fat jade bottle was revealed. The jade bottle was sealed by a golden talisman, looking very mysterious. No, you can't touch it. A golden crow screamed and rushed over crazily. Obviously, the treasures in the mutton fat jade bottle were very important to Wu Lingfei. Lin Sun kicked him away. He did not open the mutton fat jade bottle. He put it back into the purple copper jade box and put it away. The treasures inside must be amazing. Otherwise, it would not be so sealed. Next, Lin Sun cleaned out all the items in the treasury and put them away. He plundered everything clean. The hearts of those golden crows were bleeding, and they were on the verge of collapse. These were all fortunes that they'd painstakingly gathered, but now they'd all been snatched away by someone else. Lin Sun could not help but sigh in his heart. Robbery was really the fastest way to collect wealth. It was simple and violent. There was no need to look for opportunities and fortunes. He could just rob his enemies directly. You can't take it away. If the seventh prince knows it, He is bound to be angry and start massacre. At that time, no one will be able to bear his anger. The Golden Crow clan strongmen were anxious. Speaking of Wu Lingfei, can any of you tell me where he is now? Asked Lin's son. The moment that was said, everyone exchanged looks. This demon god Lin had committed such a heartless act, yet he still dared to find the seventh prince? Wasn't he afraid of death? At that moment, a thunderous roar sounded from outside the hall. Demon god Lin, how dare you barge into our territory to commit murder? You have a death wish. Accompanied by a loud roar, for golden figures rushed over violently. The golden crows present were so agitated that they felt like tearing up. They were pleasantly surprised. This time, 4 top figures had returned. Furthermore, they were all dazzling figures of the golden crow lineage. They were so powerful that they could suppress the top giants. Outside the hall, the cultivators who were watching the battle were stirred. They had witnessed the return of the 4 top figures of the golden crow lineage. Each was stronger than the last. It was a heart-wrenching sight. It's the top figures of the golden crow lineage. Furthermore, all 4 of them returned together. That demon god Lin is in trouble. The cultivators of the myriad Bee Spirit Mountain and Xuandu Dao sect secretly heaved a sigh of relief. But at the same time, they were somewhat disappointed. They had originally planned on robbing Lin Sun of the treasures of the Golden Crow lineage after Lin Sun had robbed them of their treasures. But from the looks of it, it was definitely not going to work. The other cultivators were also paying close attention. Would Fiend God Lin be unable to escape this time? Sigh, he's too stubborn. He shouldn't have entered the Golden Crow lineage's territory. Now he's being blocked. Wang Dong sighed inwardly, feeling extremely anxious. He had a good impression of Lin Sun and could not bear to see him suffer this calamity. But just a moment later, a jaw-dropping scene appeared. Chapter 1153. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, a tall figure slowly walked out of the gate of the Golden Crow clan's palace. Dressed in moon-white robes, he looked otherworldly and had an otherworldly aura. Demon Lin. Everyone was stunned and couldn't believe it. Just now, for pinnacle figures from the Golden Crow lineage had clearly entered the hall. But why did Fiend Celestial Lin walk out so easily? What about the 4 top Golden Crow clan experts? Lu Chuan and others of the Bee Spirit Mountain and Gao Xian of Xuandu Orthodoxy all had a bad feeling. Could it be? At the thought of the result, their faces changed, their calves and stomachs cramped, and they looked at Lin Sun with horror in their eyes. Lin Sun ignored them and left in a hurry. No one stopped him. Everyone present knew that Lin Sun had seriously violated the rules of the ancient city of immortal burning when he broke into the territory of the Golden Crow clan and carried out fierce killing. But under such circumstances, who dared to accuse him? Who dared to punish him? Perhaps only an ancient freak would be able to suppress demon god Lin's arrogance. But who would want to incur enmity with demon god Lin for no reason? As some strong people thought, the rules were only a means to restrain the weak. The real strong had already stood above the rules. Let's go and have a look. Some cultivators shot their gazes towards the grand hall where the Golden Crow's line resided. Although they couldn't enter without permission, they could still find out something by relying on their divine senses. God! Soon, many practitioners trembled and their scalps went numb when they saw a bloody scene. 3 of the 4 peak experts who had charged in the main hall in a menacing manner were killed on the spot. Their corpses had been blasted apart and were drenched in blood. The other one was nowhere to be found. In the hall, the Golden Crow clan experts who were suppressed by Lin Sun were lucky enough to survive. But they were all stunned and had a nervous breakdown. Obviously, they were scared out of their wits. It wasn't long before everyone outside the hall found out about all of this, and all of them were stunned. It was too ferocious. Those 3 were core figures of the Golden Crow clan, and they were outstanding geniuses that had a chance of stepping foot into the peak of the King realm. Yet all of them had been killed by Devil God Lin, and their corpses were strewn all over the ground. How strong is Demon Lin on Earth? It was the first time for many people to see Lin Sun's great power. Don't forget that he once suppressed the ancient freak Jin Xiaoming of the Golden Heavenly Snake bloodline. His combat strength can be ranked at the top in the entire immortal burning realm. Someone sighed. The battle soon swept across the entire ancient city of immortal incineration like a storm, causing a huge uproar and shocking countless cultivators. It had only been a few days since they entered the apex domain, but fiend god Lin had already unleashed his ferocious might. He ignored the city's rules and stormed into the Golden Crow lineage's territory. This was too inconceivable and astounding. This battle had also established Lin Sun's demonic might, causing many cultivators to fear him. Even the ancient orthodoxies began to be vigilant. Outside the immortal burning ancient city, Lin Sun was flying at full speed. "You're walking right into my trap." In Lin Sun's hand was a golden crow. His face was livid, and he looked at Lin Sun with resentment. "You just need to tell me the route." Lin Sun looked indifferent. In the territory of the Golden Crow clan, Lin Sun killed the 3 peerless figures who suddenly appeared and left the Golden Crow clan in his hand alone. This man was called Wu Tianshun, one of the core descendants of the Golden Crow lineage. He had stepped into the apex domain and was extremely dazzling. At the same time, he was also one of Wu Lingfei's right-hand men. "They're in Finchin Valley." Wu Tianshun answered without hesitation. He knew that Lin Sun's presence was no different from courting death. "Finchin Valley? Yes, your 2 friends are very vigilant. After entering the city yesterday, they sensed something was wrong and left the ancient city of immortal incineration in advance. Unfortunately, they've already been targeted by the 7th Prince. How could they escape?" According to Wu Tianshun, Old Toad and Alu had entered the ancient city of immortal incineration yesterday, but they sensed danger and decisively withdrew from the city. But Wu Lingfei had already set his eyes on them, so he sent people to chase after them. Now, both of them were trapped in a mountain called Finchin Valley. "How many people are involved?" Lin Sun asked. Wu Tianshun was stunned for a moment and then laughed grimly. "Many, many. Not only the 7th Prince, but also Fairy Ling Hua of Xuandu Taoism sect and Liang Xuyin, the ancient freak of Beast Mountain." After a pause, he continued, "In addition, there are many peerless figures from other ancient forces, including some ruthless ones." Lin Sun frowned and was puzzled. Wu Lingfei wanted to capture Old Toad and Alu to force him to submit, but why did other forces also get involved? Moreover, it was too much to muster such a large force. "Are you afraid?" "Ha! Demon Lin, you have something to be afraid of?" Wu Tianshun laughed grimly with the pleasure of revenge. "Unfortunately, even if you go there, you're doomed to be unable to save your 2 friends. You can only watch them die in front of you." Crack! Lin Sun slapped Wu Tianshun so hard that his ears were buzzing, his eyes were seeing stars, and his lips were bleeding. But even so, Wu Tianshun still laughed. "Look, you're angry. You must feel bad, right? How could you, Demon Lin, have such a day? Let me tell you, no matter who it is, anyone who goes against this Golden Crow will have a bad end, including you." His voice was full of pleasure. "Don't you feel ashamed that Golden Crow dispatched so many people just to deal with my 2 friends?" Lin Sun said indifferently. Wu Tianshun snorted. "Humph, I know what you want to ask. I'm not afraid to tell you that this time, the 7th Prince of our clan didn't invite other forces at all. The mistake is that your 2 friends escaped into Finchin Valley safely." "What do you mean?" "Finchin Valley contains great fortune, but also great danger. But your 2 friends can enter safely, which will naturally attract others' attention." Wu Tianshun said coldly. "Everyone suspects that your friends should have a treasure that can let them enter the place of fortune in Finchin Valley. It's abnormal that they don't attract attention." When he spoke up to hear, he couldn't help but sigh. "It's truly a pity. I wonder who leaked the news and drew the attention of so many experts. Otherwise, this great fortune would have definitely fallen into the hands of my Golden Crow clan." Lin Sun's expression was uncertain. He finally understood that because of this great fortune, Old Toad and Ah Lu became delicious cakes in the eyes of others. Lin Sun still remembered that before entering the absolute domain, Old Toad once said that after entering the immortal burning realm, He would take Lin Sun and Ah Lu to a place of great fortune. That place of great fortune should be the Finshan Valley, mentioned by Wu Tianshun. Obviously, they had to escape into Finshan Valley to save their lives when being chased by Wu Lingfei. But they didn't expect that they would be coveted by other forces because of this. They were regarded as fat sheep. Oh, are you feeling very troubled? Haha, why don't you beg me? Maybe I will plead with the seventh prince. As long as you submit to the seventh prince and serve him, you may be able to save the lives of your two friends. Wu Tianshun laughed proudly. Bang! Lin Sun directly slapped him and knocked him out. Finshan Valley, located in the depths of a majestic mountain range, was like a burning valley. The sky was like fire, and a sea of red clouds emerged. The valley was very strange. It was like a burning spark, but it was so huge and deep that one couldn't see the end of it. The rocks and plants in the valley all showed a delicate red color. Looking from afar, the whole valley seemed to be erupting into flames, burning the sky. Whoosh! Lin Sun landed. Looking at the depths of the valley, he asked, "Are they inside?" Wu Tianshun nodded, and then said, "Well, have you thought it over? With your strength, if you turn to the seventh prince, you are destined to have a bright future. Moreover, you will save the lives of your two friends. It's killing two birds with one stone. Everyone is happy. Why not? Do you think Wu Lingfei will agree if I exchange your life for his?" Lin Sun asked. Wu Tianshun was stunned, and then sneered, "Impossible. The seventh prince is the most ruthless. He won't be threatened by others." "Then what's the use of keeping you?" Lin Sun said. Wu Tianshun's face changed. Realizing that something was wrong, he panicked and said, "Don't forget, I guided you to come here." Crack! Before he finished his words, Lin Sun twisted his neck and destroyed his spirit. Before he died, his eyes were wide open, unable to believe and accept all this. Lin Sun raised his hand and put his body into the storage ring. Then he took a deep breath and walked towards Finshan Valley in the distance. Invisibly, his tall figure emitted a kind of pressure, and his heart was almost unable to suppress the killing, intense surging. Just a few days after arriving in the absolute summit domain, Old Toad and Alu were in danger. How could Lin Sun bear it? Did they really think Lin Sun was easy to bully? That was a big mistake. Walking into Finshan Valley, it was another scene. From time to time, dazzling flames swept from the rocks and plants, which was the manifestation of the amazing power of the flame. The air was so hot that it seemed to be able to melt the metal. When people breathed, it was like swallowing charcoal. But this wasn't a problem for Lin Sun at all. Walking into the depths of the valley, a rugged and lonely flaming mountain appeared. It was thousands of meters high, like a burning pillar of fire. At the bottom of the flaming mountain, there was a natural cave entrance. "Stop! This place has been blocked. No entry is allowed." Before Lin Sun could approach, someone appeared and blocked the entrance. Their expressions were cold, and their eyes were as frightening as knives. "I'm looking for someone," said Lin Sun. "Who? You're not qualified to know. Just get out of the way," Lin Sun said as he walked towards the cave. He looked calm and composed, but no one knew that he was about to lose control of the killing intent in his heart. Even the entrance to the cave was blocked, which showed how dangerous the situation was for Old Toad and Alu. Lin Sun didn't dare to think what would happen to him if the two of them were in trouble and never saw each other again. P.S. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. Goldfish was so sleepy that he fell asleep at the desk when he was writing. Then he was awakened by a muffled thunder. He looked out the window and realized it was raining. Thanks to the thunder, the goldfish was able to fulfill its promise and finish the 10th chapter without falling asleep. Also thanks to the friends who threw in monthly votes, supported me, left messages and favorites when I broke out. If it weren't for you, Goldfish wouldn't have been able to finish the 10th chapter. Chapter 1154. How dare you? A cultivator's face darkened when he saw Lin Sun striding over, and he raised his saber to strike. Swoosh! The Tao light was bright and boundless like a silver sea. However, before it could get close, the peerlessly swift and fierce saber collapsed inch by inch, and a rain of light scattered in the air. Shit! The cultivator's pupils constricted, and he was just about to change his move when he suddenly felt a terrifying pressure like a landslide and a tsunami. He felt suffocated, and his bones broke as if he was crushed by a divine mountain. He fell to the ground with a thump, and blood flowed from his 7 apertures as he died. From the beginning to the end, Lin Sun hadn't made a move. His figure was tall, his black eyes were like lightning, and his expression was terrifyingly cold. A clear and brilliant Tao light suffused his entire body. His steps were steady like a devil moving forward. The other cultivators' expressions changed when they saw this, and they roared, "Enemy attack!" They turned around and charged into the cave. Rumble. However, they just turned around when a snow-white ice dragon raised its head in the air and swung its tail. All of them were sent flying, coughing up large mouthfuls of blood, and smashed against the rock wall, their bones and tendons exploding. He hadn't held back. Lin Sun had already aroused killing intent when he learned that Old Toad and Alu were in danger. He didn't mind killing everyone if anything happened to them. There was actually another world within the cave. It was like entering a strange, secret realm. The world was crimson red, like a blazing furnace. Strands of magnificent fiery glow soared up and drifted between heaven and earth as if they'd entered a kingdom of fire. When Lin Sun entered, he saw an extremely magnificent palace standing in the distance. It seemed to be made of the world's brightest red jade, and it flowed with dazzling and magnificent rays of light. 2 bronze statues stood in front of the palace. One was a green deer, and the other was a white crane. Deer and crane were homophonic. The eaves of the palace extended in 8 directions, and in each direction there were 8 fiery bronze lamps that emitted fiery glow and illuminated the surroundings. The palace stood between heaven and earth like the backbone that held up the universe. This was a situation where only it reigned supreme. Obviously, this secret realm was a historical site, and this palace definitely had a great origin. Someone's coming. That person seems to be Fiend Godlin. Numerous cultivators from different forces had gathered outside the palace. All of them couldn't help but be stunned and shocked when they saw Lin Sun walking over from the distant horizon. Demon God Lin. He actually killed his way here alone? Lin Sun was fearless as he strode forward with large strides towards the palace in the distance. His gaze was piercingly cold while his body emanated terrifying killing intent, and it caused the expressions of many cultivators to change without end. In their days, it was as if they saw a great devil god descend into the world, and it carried boundless killing intent as it approached, and its imposing aura caused them to feel terrified. Stop him! No matter who it is, no one is allowed to disrupt this operation. Shouts resounded as these cultivators that belonged to different powers charged over, and they didn't ask Lin Sun's intentions at all before attacking directly. Obviously, something extremely important was happening in the Divine Fire Palace, and it couldn't be disturbed. Therefore, even if they knew it was Lin Sun who had come, these cultivators stationed outside didn't hold back at all. Rumble. In an instant, dazzling and resplendent divine radiance flashed through the sky, while all sorts of treasures fluttered about, and they complemented each other as they poured down towards Lin Sun. Such a scene was sufficient to make the hearts of peerless figures palpitate. At the same time, Lin Sun finally made a move. His black pupils surged like abysses while killing intent covered the heavens and the earth like tidewater as it swept out. His body glowed while clear radiance flowed, and the tune of the grand Tao rumbled. Bang! A single punch smashed out, and it shook the heavens and the earth. It was visible to the eye as space seemed like a canvas that had been crushed into pieces, and a shocking rift was torn open on it and stretched out in a straight line. Bang! The cultivators that charged at the front were instantly drowned by the vast force of the punch, and their bodies rumbled as they exploded into pieces while a rain of blood sprayed. Bang! 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 After that, muffled explosions resounded incessantly. It was like cutting chives, and all the experts that were struck by the force of the punch were pierced through. Their bodies split apart while fresh blood sprayed, and no less than 10 people perished. On the other hand, A portion of the secret techniques and treasures that attacked towards Lin Sun were directly crushed into pieces, while a portion hadn't even approached Lin Sun before they were obstructed and dispersed. A single punch shocked everyone. The surroundings were deathly silent. Many people felt a chill run down their spines while their bodies trembled, and they were terrified by this punch. From the beginning until the end, Lin Sun didn't stop moving, and his expression was terrifyingly calm. Demon God Lin, you're courting death. You're bound to be annihilated. Someone was unwilling to allow Lin Sun to barge into the Divine Flame Palace just like that, and he threatened. Rumble. Lin Sun flicked his sleeve, causing a river of stars to spread out in the sky. Numerous large stars were burning and erupting within it, and they emanated a terrifying and boundless force of incineration. In an instant, the person that spoke was burned to ashes. Moreover, the nearby cultivators were affected by it, and they were enveloped by the flaming river of stars and burned alive. Flaming Star River. This peerless Tao art was most suitable for group attacks, and it possessed shocking destructive force. At this point, the few remaining cultivators were astounded, and they didn't dare move forward to give their lives away. They'd been completely deterred by Lin Sun's murderous and bloody might. They'd heard of Lin Sun's reputation in the past, but they hadn't witnessed it with their own eyes after all. Earlier, they'd even boasted that they were the inheritors of an ancient sect and intended to obstruct Lin Sun. Yet now, they completely understood that relying on their combat strength was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. The gate of the Divine Fire Palace was closed tightly. When he passed by the bronze statues of a green deer and a white crane in front of the palace, Lin Sun suddenly felt that an invisible restrictive force was blocking in front of him, and it intended to prevent him from entering. This was a test. The inheritors of the orthodoxy guarding outside all knew that only the real top figures could enter the palace. However, this naturally wasn't a problem for Lin Sun. Boom! Lin Sun only paused for a moment, and then he took the opportunity to stride forward. As soon as he took a step forward, the invisible restrictive force collapsed with a bang. At the same time, the closed gate of the Divine Fire Palace opened silently. Whoosh! Without any hesitation, Lin Sun flashed in. When the cultivators outside the palace saw this, they looked at each other in dismay, and their hearts were drowned by uncontrollable shock. Previously, they'd witnessed the top figures entering the Divine Fire Palace with their own eyes, and they'd all spent a lot of effort. Few of them were as relaxed as Lin Sun. Boom! The gate of the Divine Fire Palace closed silently. Lin Sun didn't care about this, because as soon as he entered, he suffered a blow. It was a dark blue halberd, which chopped at his head, setting off a dazzling waterfall of thunder and lightning. This chop was unexpected. Obviously, it had been prepared for a long time, just waiting for Lin Sun to come in. The dazzling lightning and thunder were too fierce and swift. If it were other top figures, they would be seriously injured even if they didn't die when they were caught off guard. But Lin Sun was calm. He clenched his fist and punched it lightly. This blow was understated, without a trace of smoke and fire. But when it collided with the halberd, a mighty force suddenly burst out on the surface of the fist. Clang! The deafening sound of the collision resounded. It was just a light blow, but the dark blue halberd suddenly bent, as if it couldn't bear such a collision. Then, with a bang, the figure holding the halberd bounced off as if struck by lightning. Looking carefully, the owner of the halberd was a descendant of the Beast's Mountain. He had black hair and white eyebrows, and his eyes were as cold as blades. He was extremely capable. However, at this moment he was shocked. His face alternated between green and white, as if he couldn't believe that the chop he had prepared for a long time could be so easily broken. Moreover, if he hadn't dodged in time, he would have been injured. Demon God Lin, you are indeed a strong man who has stepped into the extreme realm. The white-browed youth looked gloomy. Lin Sun ignored him. His eyes and divine sense instantly covered the whole place. The interior of the palace was so vast that it was like a small world. The roof was like a sky curtain, extremely high and inlaid with fiery red beads, like bright stars. There were a total of 108 huge bronze pillars standing in the main hall. Each pillar was engraved with ancient patterns, such as flowers, birds, insects, fish, the sun, the moon, mountains and rivers, ancestors offering sacrifices, ancient totems, standing in front of the bronze pillars. They were as small as ants. It could be seen how magnificent this palace was, just like the legendary Heavenly Palace. At this moment, there were dozens of figures in front of the main hall, each of them from different forces. Some were overflowing with golden light, some were hazy with silver light, and some had long purple hair. All of them were different, but every single one of them had an incomparably shocking aura. They were like gods standing there, and just the aura they emitted was enough to suffocate everyone. At a glance, Lin Sun saw Wu Lingfei, the seventh prince of the Golden Crow bloodline, Fairy Ling Hua, the ancient freak of Xuandu Taoism sect, Liang Xuyin of the Beast Mountain. Apart from them, there was the gray-haired youth carrying a longbow made of animal bone, as well as some other men and women. None of them were weaker than the others present. Demon God Lin, you actually have the guts to come alone? Wu Lingfei smiled warmly, his eyes flowing with divine light. I'm just here to die. There's nothing strange about it. A purple-haired man with a devilish face sneered. He wore a silver battle robe and had his hand behind his back as he glanced at Lin Sun indifferently. Lin Sun still ignored him. His gaze was now directed to the depths of the main hall. There, Old Toad was bathed in blood, his hair disheveled, and his body tottering as if he couldn't hold on any longer. Alu's body, which was as imposing as a mountain, stood in front of Old Toad. However, he also looked very miserable. His body, which was as sturdy as a rock, was covered in bloody wounds. Blood flowed out and gathered in a pool at his feet. At this moment, Lin Sun's black eyes froze. Every inch of his skin seemed to be burning with anger. He had already expected that the two would be in a dangerous situation, but he didn't expect that they were already injured like this. An unprecedented anger surged in his chest, but Lin Sun's expression grew calmer, which meant that he was beyond anger. Damn it, Lin Sun, if you didn't come, I would have died. Old Toad shouted, but his injuries were too severe. As soon as he opened his mouth, he coughed violently, and his handsome face twitched with pain. Big brother. Alu was also extremely agitated. He roared, "Can you do me a favor? Speak." Lin Sun took a deep breath and forced himself to restrain the anger in his heart. However, his hands were trembling slightly, a sign that he was about to lose control of his killing intent. Kill them. Alu spat out each word, gnashing his teeth with endless hatred. Chapter 1155. Old Toad and Alu weren't weak. On the contrary, they were extremely powerful and possessed amazing inherited power. They were not inferior to any of the top giants in the present age. But now, they were seriously injured and on the verge of despair. Lin Sun could tell at a glance that if he had come a little later, the consequences would be unimaginable. Dozens of top figures from different orthodoxies were besieging them, including ancient freaks like Wu Lingfei, Ling Hua, and Liang Xuyin. It could be said that it wasn't easy for the two of them to last until now. Kill them. Just 4 words echoed in this incomparably majestic palace. They were filled with unwillingness, anger, and endless hatred. Lin Sun didn't even need to think about it to know how helpless they had been when they could make Alu so angry. Okay. Lin Sun spat out a word. It was like a thunderclap, surging and resounding, accompanied by an uncontrollable killing intent. It spread out like a tide, making the void wail. In an instant, many people's faces changed slightly. In their eyes, Lin Sun seemed to have become another person. He was like a demon coming out of the abyss, emitting a chilling aura. Ha! Do you really think Demon Lin can save your lives? A man covered in silver light and carrying a spiritual sword said with a hint of ridicule in his voice. Lin Sun, don't say harsh words. You've seen the current situation. It's not too late to recognize me as your master. I promise I'll give you a chance to live. Wu Lingfei, dressed in a golden robe, smiled gently and spoke casually. Wu Lingfei, did you get permission from our moon-worshipping cult? A man with purple eyes and fair skin asked coldly. Moon-worshipping cult. It was a mysterious orthodoxy in the Saint Hermit land with an extremely ancient heritage. This purple-eyed young man was called Lai Hai. He was a peerless genius of this cult and had a combat power that didn't belong to ancient freaks. What's the point of saying so much? We're here for the opportunity. We'll kill whoever dares to stop us, said a woman with a mysterious light totem on her back. She was a descendant of the mysterious light ancient clan, and her name was Xianjing. I have heard of this demon god Lin long ago, but his two friends are so weak. How disappointing. A man with a head full of green hair and a strange mystic mark on his glabella said, "Why don't all of you watch and let me play with this famous fiend celestial Lin?" This was a top figure of the Sea Soul clan. His name was Shang Lan, and he was extremely powerful. In the previous battle, he had already displayed astonishing strength. Ridiculous! Ah Lu roared furiously. If it wasn't for you guys shamelessly ganging up on me, I could have smashed a bunch of trash like you to death with a single stick. The green-haired Shang Lan sneered and said, "A loser dares to speak so courageously? You're far from being his match in a one-on-one fight." Dozens of strong men from different forces present were very conceited. They talked all at once and regarded Lin Sun as nothing. Lin Sun ignored him and carefully sensed. At this moment, he finally confirmed that there were only 26 opponents here, and no one was hiding in the dark. "Stop fighting. I'll fight this fiend celestial Lin." Lai Yanhai of the moon-worshipping cult stood up. He was extremely talented and had the strongest battle blood flowing in his body. His combat strength was terrifying. "No, let me kill this fiend celestial Lin first." Xianjing, who had a mysterious totem on her back, moved first. Her figure flashed, and with a boom, the void was torn apart. Her aura was extremely sharp. Like a ray of mysterious lightning, she whizzed over. "Are you fighting to die? There's no need to be anxious. I'll kill all of you one by one." Lin Sun's black eyes were cold, and a chilling light surged in them. He was no longer suppressing the surging, killing intent in his body. Boom! Xianjing had already rushed over. Her white palm was surrounded by a terrifying, mysterious light, and she slashed down with the boundless power of the Great Way. King Xian world-breaking palm. This was the unique skill of the ancient mystic light clan. When it was slashed out, the void collapsed. It was extremely sharp and dazzling. Many people's eyes narrowed because Xianjing did not display such a powerful strength in the previous battles. But now, when she was fighting against demon god Lin, her battle strength was completely different. It was obvious that she had held back her strength. In fact, although there were dozens of them because they came from different forces, they were all wary of each other. As a result, when they were besieging Alu and Old Toad, they restrained each other and didn't go all out. They didn't want others to take advantage of their weakness. This also gave Alu and Old Toad a chance to catch their breath. If it wasn't for this, it would have been very difficult for them to last until now under the siege of so many powerful figures. Facing Xianjing's attack, Lin Sun raised his hand and punched out. The power of his fist was like a boundless ocean, destroying everything in its path. Boom! The void trembled and let out a shattering sound. Surging divine light collided and swept out, drowning the entire place. What was amazing was that the 108 bronze pillars in this hall glowed and flowed with an obscure taboo power, making the entire hall impregnable and undamaged. Otherwise, the power of this attack alone would have been enough to crush mountains and rivers. When the divine light dissipated, Lin Sun stood where he was, not moving at all. Xianjing, who came from the ancient mysterious light clan and had an incomparably noble bloodline, came fast and retreated even faster. She staggered back several meters, one of her jade arms trembling slightly and blood flowing out from between her fingers. This demon god Lin can't be underestimated. Many people were surprised. Xianjing's combat power was obvious to all, but she suffered a small loss in the first confrontation, which was surprising. Very good. It's satisfying to kill such an opponent. If he's a good-for-nothing, I won't bother to fight him. Xianjing looked delicate and beautiful, but her words were sharp and threatening. At this moment, her eyes were bright and filled with a monstrous coldness. Clang! She took out a scimitar flowing with mysterious light and rushed over as she spoke. Unfortunately, you're not qualified to stop me. You're doomed to die, Lin Sun whispered. Then, he attacked without holding back. He had endured for a long time, and the anger in his heart was like an erupting volcano that needed to be vented. Boom! The two fought fiercely. After dozens of collisions, Lin Sun suddenly pressed his palm down, and with a bang, the scimitar in Xianjing's hand was sent flying. Moreover, her delicate body flew out as if pushed by a mountain. She coughed up blood, and her pretty face suddenly became extremely pale. Her bones and tendons collapsed on her shoulder, and her flesh was badly mangled. Her left arm was almost crippled, and just a little bit more, and her neck would have been injured. What? Everyone was shocked, and their eyes flickered. Before, they were all very conceited and regarded Lin Sun as an equal at most, so they didn't have much fear. But now, they all realized that something was wrong. Demon God Lin's combat power was far stronger than they had expected. I'll help you. Suddenly, Shanglan of the Sea Soul clan let out a long roar. His green hair flew in the wind as he rushed into the battlefield with a giant axe in hand. His momentum was like a raging sea, and with every step he took, the void shattered. The giant axe was steaming with dazzling Taoist light, and its power was extremely terrifying. But in just over 10 rounds, he was injured by Lin Sun's ramming. He coughed up blood, and like a kite with a broken string, he smashed hard on a bronze pillar, seeing stars. Everyone's expression changed again, and they looked at Lin Sun as if they were staring at a monster. In the past, every one of them could be called a monster in the eyes of other cultivators, and they were incredibly powerful. But now, the power Lin Sun showed was so powerful that they all felt that they had met a monster. Everyone, it's best if we attack together to avoid any unforeseen events. This demon god Lin possesses heaven-defying battle prowess. If we want to kill him, we need to work together. The 7th prince of the Golden Crow clan, Wu Lingfei's eyes flickered as he wore a stern expression. He had threatened to take Lin Sun as a servant before, but now, he didn't dare to do so anymore. The 7th prince is right. This demon god Lin looks very difficult to deal with. If we fight separately, we may be defeated by him one by one. This result is not what you want to see, Fairy Linghua also said. Fairy Linghua spoke as well. Her gaze was gloomy and filled with resentment. She still hadn't forgotten the humiliation Lin Sun had brought her. Big brother, do you need help? Alu shouted, seeing that the situation was not good. He was anxious. Shut up. You'll only make trouble if you go up. Just protect me. Old Toad coughed violently and said through gritted teeth, let him have a chance to show off. If he's really beaten down, then we can only risk our lives. Kill. In the field, figures rushed out one after another, all pointing their spears at Lin Sun. They came from different forces, and this time, they all came to seize the great fortune. But they all knew very well that if they didn't get rid of Lin Sun first, no one could succeed. Alu, protect Old Toad. You'll see how I kill them. Lin Sun took a deep breath. His spirit, chi, and spirit were burning like a furnace, boiling completely. The wrath of Yazi, the Saint Method, the 9 changes of Calamity Dragon, all the profound meanings were running. But this time, the power he chose to use changed. For the first time, he used the way of star obliteration without any reservation. Haha, you're boasting shamelessly. Not to mention you. If it were anyone else, they would definitely die. Someone sneered. This wasn't boasting. Generally speaking, even an ancient freak couldn't resist the siege of so many peers. It should be noted that there were many ancient freaks and peerless evildoers among them. They all stood at the top and were like overlords of a region. Of course, this was only under normal circumstances. Boom! The first to rush over was Lai Yunhai from the moon-worshipping cult. His purple eyes burst with strange divine light. His body was steaming with clouds, and he burst out with divine power. The spear in his hand swept horizontally, like a purple full moon moving horizontally, blazing with divine light. However, Lin Sun broke through his attack with one hand, firmly grasped the spear with lightning speed, and then exerted his strength. Boom! The spear was forcibly seized by Lin Sun, and then with a sweep of the spear, Lai Yunhai was directly smashed into the air by his own spear. Kill! Lin Sun's killing intent and resentment turned into a roar, like a thunder stirring the ninth heaven. His blood and chi surged, and he rushed up. His black hair flew in the air, and his face was terrifyingly cold. Even in the face of a group of besiegers, he showed no fear and took the initiative to kill. Chapter 1156. Boom! In an instant, Lin Sun's tall figure seemed to turn into a big abyss, steaming with obscure devouring power. Vaguely, countless stars were annihilated around him. Star obliteration way. This was the first time that Lin Sun took the initiative to use it at the beginning of a battle since he mastered it. Moreover, he didn't hold back at all. For one thing, there were dozens of opponents this time, including many powerful ancient freaks. For another, the encounter of a Lu and Old Toad made Lin Sun completely lose his temper. The accumulated killing intent and resentment in his heart were like an erupting volcano. If he didn't vent them, he would hurt himself. Kill! He rushed forward like a demon on an expedition. You want to be our enemy alone? You're courting death. Lai Yunhai shouted. He was defeated by Lin Sun, and even his spear was taken away by Lin Sun, which made his face gloomy and furious. Whoosh! His figure was like lightning, and his purple eyes were like lightning. His figure suddenly turned into a purple moon, rushing towards Lin Sun at a high speed. This was the supreme, inherited, secret method of the moon-worshipping cult. It was extremely horrible and could directly crush the opponent with the power of Yin. The others also used their real strength, not daring to be careless. They wanted to kill Lin Sun together. Whoosh! Unexpectedly, the first one to rush to Lin Sun was a sword chi, steaming with silver brilliance. It was the man with a spirit sword on his shoulder and silver light all over his body. Lin Sun's eyes flashed with cold lightning. He moved with ice drake steps and directly collided with the silver sword with his fist. Bang! The fierce and horrible sword chi was broken inch by inch, and the fist was invincible. Others' faces changed slightly. How arrogant he was! He dared to fight against the sword with his bare hands, and his every move gave people a sense of invincibility. Clang! The sword rang harshly. The silver-robed man's sword was bright and burst out a strong sword intent, intending to destroy Lin Sun's right arm. Unexpectedly, this blow was engulfed and annihilated like a clay ox entering the sea, not to mention destroying Lin Sun's arm. He couldn't even resist the fist force. Boom! The next moment, the silver-robed man was shaken away. His figure staggered back, and his face turned blue and white. Almost at the same time, Lai Yunhai attacked once more. But before he got close, 9 golden words, tribulation, suddenly appeared around Lin Sun, which seemed to be made of magic iron. Together, they deduced the meaning of Basha prohibition. Suddenly, Lai Yunhai, who was like a violet sun, seemed to have fallen into the net of the great Tao, and his figure became sluggish. Bang! With a loud bang, Lai Yunhai was hit by Lin Sun's fist. He was blown away again and smashed on a bronze pillar. His ribcage was broken. So powerful. The faces of the others changed again, and their expressions became solemn. In the blink of an eye, 2 powerhouses were defeated. They almost couldn't believe it. After all, no matter if it was the silver-robed man or Lai Yunhai, both of them were existences that stood at the peak of the absolute peak realm. Everyone, if we don't kill this fiend today, he'll definitely become a great calamity in the future. Wu Lingfei shouted and attacked brazenly. Suddenly, a pair of golden wings appeared on his back. Flames flowed like a tide and burned the void. Almost at the same time, with a shout, the others attacked with all their strength, not daring to be careless. They all realized that what Wu Lingfei said was true. With Fiend God Lin's present strength, he seemed to be the strongest among the pinnacle realms. He was invincible among his peers, and this left them alarmed. Now, as long as Lin Sun attacked, it would be absolutely fatal for ordinary absolute peak cultivators. Only they could fight against him together. If it was a one-on-one fight, no one had the confidence to be his opponent. Bang! In a huge palace, a fierce battle broke out. For a moment, the treasures were dazzling, like meteors pouring down, Taoist law surging and roaring. The terrible fluctuations of the battle were like the nine heavens' strong wind, crushing the void and sweeping in all directions. If this happened in the outside world, the destruction caused would be absolutely unimaginable. In the battle, Lin Sun felt incomparable pressure, but he was not afraid. On the contrary, the more he fought, the braver he became. He was like a big abyss, sweeping across the field, with the momentum to swallow the universe, mountains and rivers, and annihilate the power of the stars. This made people's hearts tremble. A single person was facing a few tens of existences that could be said to be giants of the same generation, and there was no lack of monstrous geniuses and freaks amongst them. No matter the outcome, it was sufficient to shock the world, and it would shake the world if news of it were spread. Kill! A man in cyan armor rushed over, waving a pair of bronze mirrors. But before he could get close, he was shrouded by a symbol of tribulation. The pair of bronze mirrors wailed, and even the body of the man in cyan armor was crushed with a cracking sound, almost kneeling on the ground. Lin Sun was about to kill him with one blow, when a golden sea of fire came, covering the sky and the earth. Wherever it passed, the void was incinerated. The real fire of the sun. It was the innate secret method of the Golden Crow. It was said that once the old monster of the King realm was touched by a trace of this fire, his body and soul would be destroyed instantly, turning into ashes. It was extremely overbearing and vicious. In the distance, Alu and the old toad's faces suddenly changed. This attack was too sudden, and Lin Sun was besieged. Could he block it? Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed slightly, but he did not panic. The power of star obliteration rotated around him, twisting the void like a black hole in the starry sky. Rumble, under everyone's expectant gaze, the true sun fire covered Lin Sun, submerging the area where he was. However, before they were happy, they saw that the domineering solar fire was engulfed and annihilated by the power of Lin Sun's body, like thousands of streams returning to the origin, leaving no trace. How could this be possible? Many people widened their eyes. Everyone in the world knew how terrible the true sun fire was, but it disappeared without a trace before it had time to show its power. Bang! At the same time, Lin Sun rushed out violently. A tribulation symbol turned into a seal, and with a roar, it rushed towards Wu Lingfei in the distance. Hurry up! Wu Lingfei shouted and flapped his pair of golden wings to dodge. He was shocked because he had never encountered such a situation. As long as he used the true sun fire, any opponent had to avoid it and dare not fight head-on. But today it was so easily resolved. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold, and he chased after Wu Lingfei. He wanted to kill Wu Lingfei first. This disaster was caused by this person, which made Lin Sun hate him to the bone. However, on the way, the attacks of others had arrived, forcing Lin Sun to give up chasing Wu Lingfei. Lin Sun, no matter how strong you are, under such a siege, you could be exhausted to death. In the distance, Fairy Ling Hua sneered. As long as dozens of top figures worked together, it was impossible to give Lin Sun any chance to defeat them one by one. Really, Lin Sun's black eyes became colder. His whole body was shining like a burning furnace of heaven and earth. He suddenly shook off the attacks in front of him, and then punched towards Fairy Ling Hua. Boom! This punch was earth-shattering, and it was surrounded by the power of star obliteration. Wherever it passed, the void seemed to be swallowed up, and a terrible gap was torn open. In Ling Hua's eyes, this punch was like opening the gate of the abyss to hell, and it was going to swallow her body, soul, and mind. Not good. Her pretty face suddenly changed. She suddenly urged all her strength, and even used a secret method. She spat out a mouthful of blood essence, burned the power of the origin, and fought with all her strength. A terrible collision sounded. It seemed as if an abyss had emerged there, and it had the power to swallow everything, causing many people's scalps to go numb. Ling Hua's figure was about to be swallowed, but in the end, along with a crazy scream, her body suddenly burst out with a terrible divine light, and she broke through the attack by a hair's breadth. Her figure staggered and escaped. Many people breathed a sigh of relief, while some were horrified by the terrifying power of Lin Sun's punch. It was too terrifying. In the face of that punch, it was difficult for anyone to raise the thought of fighting against it. At this time, Ling Hua seemed to be greatly stimulated after escaping from death. Her hair was disheveled, and she laughed hoarsely. Lin Sun, I told you, no matter how strong you are, it's impossible. Her voice stopped abruptly, because at the moment she spoke, a snow-white broken blade swept out and slashed in the void. This slash only had one word, fast. It was incredibly fast, as if it had broken the shackles of time and space. It moved silently and disappeared in a flash. And on Ling Hua's throat, there was a dark red bloodstain. Because it was too fast, when this bloodstain appeared, Ling Hua was still sneering and speaking. She didn't notice it until she said the word impossible. Then, her eyes widened, and her hands suddenly touched her neck. However, at the instant the tip of his finger touched her neck, her head suddenly rolled off, and blood sprayed through the air like a fountain from her neck. This scene was too strange and incredible. An ancient freak of Xuandu Taoism sect had just avoided a fatal disaster and thought she was safe. Who would have thought that she had been beheaded? All the strongmen who noticed this scene suddenly narrowed their eyes, and their hearts shook fiercely. Their bodies were a little stiff. Ling Hua, the pride of Xuandu Taoism sect, a peerless figure who had been silent for tens of thousands of years, was beheaded before she could react. At the moment of her death, there was only confusion and an indescribable fear on her face. Her eyes were wide open, and she died with everlasting regret. Everyone else felt their scalps go numb, and it was difficult for them to accept this. Dozens of top figures had joined forces to kill Lin Hua, but Lin Hua had suddenly killed one of them at this moment. How terrifying was this? This was an ancient freak who was going to rise to the top, and he was the pride of an ancient orthodoxy that had high hopes placed on him. Once he was lost, it wouldn't be as simple as the death of one person, and it would also cause an extremely heavy blow to the great forces behind him. Originally, when Lin Sun was dealing with Ling Hua, Shang Lan from the Seasoul clan had used a secret method and appeared silently behind Lin Sun, and he aimed the giant axe in his hand at Lin Sun. But when he was about to chop down, he saw the scene of Ling Hua's head falling, and he was so shocked that his heart trembled, and he almost cried out, "Bang!" At the same time, the word tribulation behind Lin Sun transformed into a divine beast and smashed fiercely. Shang Lan seemed to be pushed by a divine mountain, and his body flew up like a sandbag and smashed fiercely against the wall of the palace in the distance. Boom! The wall shook, and it could be seen how powerful the impact was. Shang Lan's body was bleeding, and every inch of his skin felt a tearing pain. He couldn't help but cry out in pain. Chapter 11:57. Shang Lan's scream woke everyone up from the shock. "We can't give him another chance." In the black mist, a figure rushed over with a bloody sickle in his hand. With a gentle stroke, the sickle tore the void with boundless sharpness. The whole area was shrouded in black mist with the smell of death and decay. It was a man with pale skin and a haggard face. He was a genius from the Nine Ghost Blood Sect. Kill! The others also realized the seriousness of the problem and attacked without hesitation. Moreover, stimulated by Ling Hua's death, almost all of them had used their trump cards and treated Lin Sun as their number one enemy. For a moment, the palace was dazzling. Each strong man was like a divine mountain, blooming with terrible power. They reflected each other, making the place full of light rain and sound of Tao. After the previous fight, they had thoroughly understood how powerful Lin Sun was, which was completely beyond their expectations. Ling Hua's death, in particular, made them smell danger and felt a serious threat. Originally, they were all fearless. They thought that Lin Sun was alone. No matter how strong he was destined to be no match for them and could be easily killed. But now, the horrible fighting power Lin Sun showed suddenly made the situation become serious. All this did not affect Lin Sun at all. After killing Ling Hua with Silence Cut, he didn't stop. He first thwarted Xianglan's sneak attack behind him, and then rushed out. Along with him, Duanren rushed out. Swish! A flash of cold light appeared in an instant. The target was Wu Lingfei. How dare you? Wu Lingfei's face was gloomy. He flapped his wings, and with a bang, endless golden flame flowed and evolved into a fire sword. A magic sword condensed by the real fire of the sun. Bang! However, after a terrible collision, there was a rain of light, withered feathers, and blood. Looking at Wu Lingfei, his left wing was cut with a long and narrow blood mark, which made him break out in a cold sweat. If he hadn't dodged in time, he would have almost followed Ling Hua's footsteps. This undoubtedly proved that even if it was a one-on-one fight, he was very likely to be no match for Lin Sun. Open for me. A strange-looking man with a vertical eye between his brows shouted out explosively. The vertical eye suddenly opened up and transformed into a magnificent beam of light that was dreamy and illusory, like a rain of light. It was the divine Mirage's pupil. It was a supreme bloodline inheritance of the Mirage monsters. It was an extremely horrifying, illusory technique that targeted at the soul of a cultivator. Once this technique was executed, it was as if a dreamscape had been created, and it was sufficient to confine the soul of the opponent within it and cause them to lose themselves. Unfortunately, this blow might be enough to deter other peerless figures, but it was useless to Lin Sun. Kill! In Lin Sun's sea of consciousness, Little Silver had long been ready. Seeing this, he grasped with both hands, and a sword of divine soul slashed out. Crack! In the distance, a thin line of blood appeared on the vertical eye between the eyebrows of the bewitching man. Following this, the vertical eye exploded, causing dark red blood to flow out. Ah! He screamed miserably, suffering a great blow. Who would have thought that not only was a single strike ineffective, it instead destroyed his most powerful talent, causing his soul to suffer serious damage. Puff! He was just about to flee when a dazzling blade appeared and sliced him in half, causing a rain of blood to spray out. The second opponent was dead. Although others were trying to help him, it was of no use. The power of Lin Sun's broken blade was completely different from before. It was suffused with the power of the Devouring Star Way, which made its power suddenly rise to an unprecedented level. Everyone was stunned for a moment. Did he die in an instant? Awesome. Big brother. Alu shouted in the distance, extremely excited. Humph! Now you should understand why a unique genius like me would regard him as a brother. One word, domineering. Old Toad beamed with joy. However, saying these words affected his injury, making him cough painfully again. It's 2 words. Alu corrected him. Do you still care about these details at this time? Old Toad said grumpily. While they were talking, the battle in the field had been breaking out, and it was getting fiercer. Everyone, if you keep hiding, we will all be in danger. Wu Lingfei's face was livid. He roared and no longer had the graceful and casual demeanor before. Why is the power of the Great Way he mastered so similar to that of Yun Qingbai? Someone said in a trembling voice. It was a tall and sturdy man. At this moment, his expression changed dramatically, and he looked incredulous. This person was the ancient freak Shi Jintong of Shi Ta. He had appeared not long ago and defeated more than a dozen influential figures in 3 days, shocking the world. However, he had been defeated by Yun Qingbai's 3 strikes. Moreover, he was very sure that if Yun Qingbai wanted to kill him, he only needed 1 strike. It was also because of this fiasco that he realized how terrifying Yun Qingbai was. However, He didn't expect that the aura of the great way of demon god Lin in front of him would be so similar to Yun Qingbai's. Moreover, it was also so terrifying. At this moment, Shi Jintong's fighting spirit was shaken, and he had the urge to escape. Kill. However, no one else had seen how terrifying Yun Qingbai was. Naturally, they couldn't understand what Shi Jintong was feeling. They were all rushing forward recklessly. As pinnacle figures, every one of them had an unparalleled heritage and pride. It was already embarrassing for dozens of them to deal with a single fiend god Lin. And at that moment, there was no way for them to repress him. This left them infuriated and humiliated. The battle for the Great Way was a battle of superiority. No one would admit that they were weak. If they couldn't kill Lin Sun this time, this defeat alone would be a stain that couldn't be washed away, which would be detrimental to their future cultivation. Go to hell. Suddenly, a strong man turned into a cyan bull the size of a small mountain. He stepped on the air with his four hooves and let out a loud roar. Adieu, Luo Yun, the formless vacuum, the Great Way. From his lips came a grand and obscure sound, like the surging wind and thunder of the ninth heaven, and also like the sound of ancient demons chanting scriptures. This was his innate Taoism, which could break mountains and rivers with one roar and split the sky. Lin Sun was besieged and couldn't be distracted. Just as he was about to be hit by the roar, he suddenly let out a roar. A golden waterfall of sound waves rushed out and turned into a Puzeo divine beast, which seemed to have broken through the starry sky and roared proudly with its head held high. Rumble, this was the roar of Puzeo, the supreme way of music and killing. Now that it was performed by Lin Sun with the way of star obliteration, its power was completely different from before. Wherever the sound waves spread, the void, the airflow, everything showed signs of annihilation. Visible to the naked eye, the roar of the cyan bull was crushed and annihilated, as if it was a small wizard in front of a great wizard. Boom! It was too late for the cyan bull to dodge. Shocked by the roar of Puzeo, it first bled from its 7 orifices, and then its mountain-like body was smashed away like being swept by a storm. Its bones and tendons were broken, and its soul and mind suffered heavy damage. It directly foamed at the mouth and fainted. One roar broke the enemy. Whoosh, however, before Lin Sun could continue, the void under his feet suddenly exploded, and a black, demonic flower emerged. Its petals opened like a big mouth. Although Lin Sun avoided it safely, he was oppressed by several attacks coming from the other side. His body was shaken, and his cheek was scratched by a sword. A trace of blood appeared. In the distance, the silver-robed man sighed inwardly. This incomparably thrilling scene made Old Toad and Alu's skin crawl, and they became nervous. Very good. I underestimated your ability. Although it was just a skin wound, Lin Sun's expression became colder. He had many opportunities to kill his opponent after being besieged until now, but he was blocked and failed. At this time, he was almost seriously injured, which made Lin Sun's killing intent more and more blazing. Clang! The broken blade glowed, and mysterious and strange patterns appeared on its surface. It was so brilliant that it looked like an illusion. Then, it chopped toward the silver-robed man. Stop him! Everyone attacked to suppress him. However, at this moment, Lin Sun's power was too strong. He was completely violent, like a demon stepping on a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. The word tribulation surrounded him, producing infinite power and crushing all attacks. Chop! Seeing Lin Sun rushing toward him, the silver-robed man's face changed greatly. The sword in his hand was extremely bright, and he chopped down angrily. Unfortunately, Lin Sun was extremely fast, and the broken blade was even more terrifying. He performed the life and death cut and broke the sword in an instant. With a sweep of the blade, the man's chest was pierced. The silver-robed man let out an earth-shattering scream. Then his body fell straight to the ground and died on the spot. Xianjing and several other powerhouses from the ancient mysterious Light clan launched a sneak attack, wanting to take this opportunity to suppress Lin Sun. However, Lin Sun's body glowed, and the power of star obliteration devouring Wei was pushed to the extreme. It was like a great abyss that could swallow everything. All the attacks were annihilated, making Lin Sun seem invincible. Puff, puff, puff. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the broken blade spun and killed 3 opponents on the spot. If Xian Jing hadn't dodged quickly, he would have been doomed. This scene was extremely shocking. In just an instant, the silver-robed man was killed, and then the people who attacked Lin Sun were killed on the spot. Everything happened too quickly. Scalding blood sprayed everywhere, filling the entire palace with a thick smell of blood. Yin Qingbai. He's as terrifying as Yun Qingbai. At this moment, Shi Jintong couldn't help but let out a scream. He turned around and fled in panic. Lin Sun's display of power made Shi Jintong's inner demons grow. Thinking of the scenes when he was defeated by Yun Qingbai, his fighting spirit completely collapsed. He ran away without a care for his face. Shame on you! Shame on you! Seeing this, the other powerhouses were shocked and angry. To be honest, Lin Sun was also a little surprised to see an ancient freak like Shi Jintong flee in fear. However, when he heard Shi Jintong comparing him with Yun Qingbai, Lin Sun felt an indescribable rejection in his heart. Moreover, Yun Qingbai was just a thief. How could he be compared with Lin Sun? At this moment, Lin Sun suddenly noticed that Wu Lingfei and several other powerhouses took this opportunity to attack Old Toad and Ah Lu. You're courting death. Chapter 1158. Boom! The void exploded. Lin Sun's figure, like a mad dragon coming out of the abyss, was extremely fast, rushing towards Wu Lingfei and others. It was visible to the naked eye that wherever he passed, the void seemed to be swallowed, annihilated, and sunk, accompanied by blazing Taoist light. Along the way, there were many strong practitioners who tried to stop him, but without exception, they were all shattered in an instant and staggered out. This was so shocking that they couldn't believe it. In the distance, Lin Sun was still a step late. Wu Lingfei and other 7 or 8 strong practitioners attacked together. They were well versed in the essence of speed, accuracy, and ruthlessness. One group attacked Alu, and the other group attacked Old Toad. The situation was dangerous. Alu and Old Toad had been seriously injured, and now they were just holding on. In the face of such a killing attack, they were doomed to be unable to resist. At this critical moment, Lin Sun became surprisingly calm, and all the hatred in his heart turned into cold, killing intent. Clang! The broken sword produced a clear and impassioned sound, flashing away in the void. Impermanence cut. Impermanence was indefinite, as unpredictable as fate, as unpredictable as cause and effect. The ancient sages even said that when impermanence came, all the laws of the world would be destroyed. The same was true of impermanence cut. As the last cut of the 6 chops of Tianyuan, this move was like the arrival of a variable with the power to frighten ghosts and gods. The essence contained in this cut could no longer be described as difficult and horrible in the secular sense. It involved the variable of the Great Way, which could be called heaven-defying. But Lin Sun had only comprehended a trace of its essence. But even so, this slash was the strongest attack he had mastered so far. At this time, this cut swept towards those strong practitioners who were attacking Alu. At the same time, Lin Sun shouted, "Old Toad, come here!" Old Toad didn't think much at all. Without hesitation, it gathered all its remaining strength and rushed towards Lin Sun. This was a kind of unreserved trust. Even if those powerful attacks were close at hand, he didn't frown. There were 4 strong practitioners who besieged Old Toad. Naturally, they couldn't just watch Old Toad join Lin Sun. Without hesitation, they killed him with all their strength. Everything happened too fast, so fast that it was only a fraction of a second. Puff! Old Toad's shoulder was pierced through, fresh blood spurting out. This was an attack from the moon-worshipping cult's successor, Lai Yunhai. He had thought that he would be able to pierce through Old Toad's head, but there was a slight mishap. What surprised him most was that in such a desperate situation, the green-robed teenager, who was obviously exhausted, burst out unprecedented potential. Instead of retreating, he continued to rush towards Lin Sun after being injured. Boom! Almost at the same time, a giant axe chopped down, wanting to cleave Old Toad in half. There was no doubt that if this attack landed, Old Toad would definitely die. CKU get lost. Like a trapped beast on the verge of despair, the Old Toad let out a roar and pressed its palm forward, swallowing the stars and spitting out the moon. However, his injuries were too heavy. Although this strike had blocked the attack of the enormous axe, he was shaken to the point that a large mouthful of blood suddenly sprayed out from his mouth, and his complexion turned ashen. However, with the help of the rebound force, his body rushed towards Lin Sun at a faster speed than before. Dying. However, to Old Toad's despair, a saber struck first, bursting forth with a dazzling golden light. Everything happened too fast. From the time Old Toad's shoulder was pierced through, to being pushed back by the giant axe, to being killed by the saber, it all happened almost in an instant. If it were someone else, they would have already accepted their fate. But Old Toad didn't. Neither did Lin Sun. At this critical moment of death, Old Toad's body suddenly flashed and suddenly turned into a palm-sized, three-legged golden toad. Lin Sun, on the other hand, gave up the idea of attacking and ran all his strength into Ice Drake steps. His speed suddenly rose by a notch. Then, Old Toad bumped into Lin Sun's arms. Lin Sun, on the other hand, was struck in the chest by the golden saber, tearing open a shocking wound. His skin and flesh were torn open, and his bones were vaguely visible. This was still under the protection of his own defense. Otherwise, this saber alone would have been enough to split him in half. The one holding the saber was a handsome and callous man. Not only did he fail to kill Old Toad, but he also injured Lin Sun. This made him slightly startled, and then ecstatic. He exerted force with his palms and fingers, intending to cut open Lin Sun's stomach. Boom! Lin Sun fiercely slapped the saber with his palm and retreated violently to one side, narrowly avoiding this fatal disaster. Without any hesitation, he rushed toward Alu with Old Toad. At the same time, Alu was also in danger. Lin Sun's impermanence cut had cut across in front of Alu in an instant, defusing the attacks from Wu Lingfei and others. Moreover, Alu was a practitioner of body refining, and his path was to become a saint. Although he was seriously injured, he still had the strength to fight. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he turned around and fled, smoothly meeting up with Lin Sun, who was rushing over. Just like that, a deadly trap was broken. From the moment Wu Lingfei and others attacked Alu and Old Toad, separately to the moment when Lin Sun and others met up, an extremely dangerous situation emerged in the blink of an eye. Even the slightest mistake could lead to a different result. It could be said to be thrilling. There was great terror between life and death. Wasn't the previous scene the same? Wu Lingfei and others were obviously surprised by this result. In particular, Lin Sun's instantaneous outburst of extraordinary power made them all palpitate and tremble. But soon, they all laughed, feeling unprecedentedly relaxed. The reason was that although Lin Sun was strong before, he was now seriously injured. On his chest, there was a shocking bloody saber wound. His skin and flesh were torn open, his bones could be vaguely seen, and blood was still gurgling out. Moreover, the power of this saber had obviously caused him a great deal of damage. Well, if I had known this earlier, I would have dealt with these two cripples first. Wu Lingfei strode over, his expression returning to his previous gentle and calm expression. He was smiling, but his smile was very cold. In his eyes, Lin Sun and Alu were seriously injured, and Old Toad's life was hanging by a thread. The outcome was already decided, and there was no more suspense. We were careless just now. We thought we could kill him, but no one expected that demon god Lin could be so powerful alone. Even I have to admire him. Lai Yinhai of the moon-worshipping sect said expressionlessly. Although he said he admired Lin Sun, his eyes were full of undisguised killing intent. No matter what, Demon God Lin is chivalrous and courageous, and he is willing to die for his friends. This is worthy of our admiration. Everyone, I suggest that we keep him alive and train him well. In the future, he will definitely become a loyal servant and serve us like a dog or a horse. Xian Jing of the ancient mysterious Light Clan said proudly, as if he was confident of victory. No matter what they said, there was a kind of excitement, a kind of coldness, and a sense of complacency and revenge. In fact, Lin Sun was too strong before, which made them shocked and angry. They suffered repeated setbacks, so that they lost face and felt ashamed and resentful. Now, seeing Lin Sun like a tiger falling to the ground, they naturally felt indescribably carefree and complacent. As they spoke, they didn't slow down and rush towards Lin Sun and the others. This was because everyone knew the principle of taking advantage of someone's weakness. For an opponent like Fiend God Lin, once he was given a chance to catch his breath, there was a high chance of something happening. Boom! At this moment, all the figures scrambled to be the first to kill Lin Sun, seeing him as a target at their mercy. They were moving, so was Lin Sun. Together with Alu, he quickly retreated to the depths of the hall, as if he was seriously injured and could only hide. He was no longer as arrogant and strong as before. However, no one noticed that Lin Sun's black eyes looked extraordinarily calm from beginning to end. Even though he was seriously injured, there was no fluctuation in his eyes. Boom! All kinds of attacks rushed over like brilliant rainbows. Lin Sun kept retreating. This palace was extremely large, and its roof was like the sky. Just each bronze pillar was as tall as the sky. Standing in it, people were like tiny ants. Thanks to this, Lin Sun had the chance to move and dodge. Lin Sun, no, you just run by yourself. I don't want to become your burden. Old Toad's voice was extremely weak. It had turned into a palm-sized, three-legged golden toad. Its body was dark and cracked, full of bloodstains. Big brother, Old Toad is right. Run away. I'll fight my way out for you. Just remember to avenge us in the future and kill these despicable guys. Alu's face was full of hatred and determination. This barbarian used to be very talkative and unreliable, but now he seemed so resolute, and the meaning in his words was moving. Lin Sun's lips twitched and his heart was burning, but he sneered. You want to die? It's not that easy. All of you have to kill the enemies for me later. I'm already like this. Old Toad seemed very excited, but before he could finish his words, his mouth was blocked by a piece of bamboo as white as snow. Old Toad groaned and felt a pure and surging hot power pouring into his throat. At the same time, Alu's mouth was also blocked by a piece of bamboo. He widened his eyes in puzzlement. Why didn't his big brother let him speak at this time? And he even blocked their mouths with a piece of bamboo. It was really, At once, Alu also felt a surge of heat flowing into his body. This was the Thunder Yuan spiritual liquid contained in the calamity, divine bamboo. No matter how serious the injury was, as long as one took the Thunder Yuan spiritual liquid, he could recover to his peak state in the shortest time. It could be said to be a first-class treasure in the world. The mysterious woman had slaughtered her way into the Black Sea Tengu clan and forcefully snatched such a precious treasure as compensation. No one knew that Lin Sun had swallowed this divine liquid as soon as he was injured. Boom! During this process, Wu Lingfei and the others had already closed in on Lin Sun. Their attacks were extremely fierce, and they seemed to want to kill Lin Sun. They did this for two reasons. First, for revenge. Second, if they could kill Lin Sun, it would be a dazzling achievement that would shock the world. Demon Lin, how long can you struggle? Go to hell. Suddenly, Lai Yunhai of the moon-worshipping cult was the first to rush over. His face was grim, and his eyes were full of excitement and cruelty. Chapter 1159. Clang! The blue spear wrapped in thunder pierced through the air with a clanging sound, and the killing power was monstrous. The successor of the moon-worshipping cult used this move to pierce Old Toad's shoulder and almost smash Old Toad's head. At this time, he tried to pierce Lin Sun's head in the same way. However, when the spear was 3 inches away from Lin Sun's eyebrows, it suddenly stopped, and couldn't go any further. What? Lai Yunhai's eyes suddenly shrank, and the excitement and cruelty hanging on the corner of his mouth also froze at this moment. His spear had already been firmly grasped by a big white and slender hand. Moreover, the killing power accumulated on the spear was completely dispelled. Damn it! Lai Yunhai was shocked. He suddenly exerted his strength to push the spear into Lin Sun's eyebrows, which was 3 inches away. Boom! But Lin Sun had already taken action. He held the spear in his palm, and a surge of majestic power burst out like a torrent. The next moment, Lai Yunhai's hand was torn, and his body was like being crushed by an ancient bull. With a bang, he was shaken out. Puff! At the same time, Lin Sun shook his hand and threw the spear out. Like a dazzling and thick blue lightning, it pierced through Lai Yunhai's chest, leaving a bowl-sized bloody hole. Crash! Blood burst out, and Lai Yunhai died violently. He was the first to rush up, but at this time his body flew out under the impact of inertia. Finally, with a bang, he fell to the ground and remained motionless. Damn it! Wu Lingfei and others' faces changed greatly. The fanaticism and excitement in their minds faded, and they almost couldn't believe their eyes. Lai Yunhai, the peerless genius of the moon-worshipping cult, was killed like this? His wound. Suddenly, Xian Jing screamed. He was surprised to find that the terrible wound on Lin Sun's chest had been healed. Except for the residual blood stains, there was no trace of injury. How could this be? Others were also shocked. Before, Lin Sun was seriously injured and almost disemboweled, so they saw this as an opportunity. They were extremely excited and scrambled to kill Lin Sun to wash away the shame and revenge. Who would have thought that in such a short period of time, the other party's injuries had actually recovered to their original state? His aura is even stronger than before. Someone's heart trembled. He noticed that Lin Sun seemed to be bathed in blood, but the power he exuded was even more frightening and powerful than before. This unforeseen event caused their hearts to tremble. Boom! On the other hand, Lin Sun didn't waste his breath. After he killed Lai Yunhai, he charged out like a storm that swept through the heavens and the earth, and his entire body was bright green and surged with the energy of the star obliteration devouring Tao. The fist force burst forth like a dragon coming out of the abyss. One of the experts had just been provoked by Lai Yunhai's death and was caught off guard. Now that he was enveloped by the fist energy, he couldn't help but let out a scream and did his best to resist. Bang! His body exploded. Even if he tried his best, he was killed on the spot like a piece of paper under Lin Sun's earth-shattering punch. This punch was clean and direct, boundlessly domineering. Hurry up and attack! Someone cried out in alarm, feeling that the situation wasn't right. There was no need for any reminder at all. The people here were all at the peak of their generation, and not a single one of them was weak. When they sensed that the situation was bad, they all brazenly attacked. However, they were still trembling in their hearts. How could Demon Lin recover so fast? Boom! The battle broke out. The confrontation at this level was undoubtedly extremely terrible. It was a great collision between the top figures in the world, and each of them had extraordinary combat power. However, the situation had been reversed. He was injured before because he wanted to save Alu and Old Toad. But now, after swallowing the Thunder Yuan spiritual liquid, coupled with the amazing healing power of the Immortal Way, Lin Sun had already recovered to his peak state. Lin Sun, who was full of resentment, wouldn't show any mercy at this time. He completely broke out. Bang! In the rain of light, there was a harsh roar. Then, a shrill roar resounded. Want to kill me? You have to die too. It was Shanglan of the Sea Soul clan. His bones and tendons were broken by Lin Sun's fist force, and his 7 apertures were bleeding. His face was grim and livid. You want to take me down with you? Die. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun's cold voice sounded. Before his voice died away, in the eyes of everyone, Lin Sun, whose clothes were stained with blood, was surging with the terrible breath of the abyss. He suddenly stepped into the void, and the broken blade also burst out at the same time. Puff! Like a ray of light from the depths of the starry sky, It disappeared into nothingness. Then a head flew up. The head flew very high, with horror, unwillingness, confusion, and disbelief on its face. In his last eyes, Lin Sun was like an unrivaled god of slaughter, so powerful, fierce, and calm. Plop! The headless body fell to the ground, and the flesh and blood were broken. Another ancient freak was killed. This scene stung the nerves of many people again. Their faces became gloomy and ugly, with deep surprise and doubt. Before, they wanted to be the first to kill Lin Sun, so as to make a name for themselves and wash away the shame and hatred in their hearts. But now, in the face of Lin Sun, who had recovered to his peak state, they only felt trembling, shocked, and puzzled. It was hard to imagine how the situation suddenly became so tragic. The reversal was too fast. No one dared to be careless, and all of them were fighting desperately. At this moment, Lin Sun was like a dreadful beast in their eyes, emitting a fatal threat. He moved freely and freely amidst the encirclement of everyone by himself, yet he wasn't suppressed at all. Conversely, he was like a violent abyss that was shifting about, and he possessed the might to swallow the surroundings and obliterate the surroundings. His entire body glistened brilliantly like an unparalleled fiend god that was arrogant and overbearing. His strong posture made many people feel cold. Puff! Soon, Lin Sun seized the opportunity to jump up, and his body slammed into the arms of a man in a yellow robe. Crack, crack! The sound of bones breaking rang out. Every inch of the man's skin, bones, internal organs, and spirit exploded, and he screamed. Then, his body exploded, and a rain of blood splashed like a waterfall. Whoosh! Before this, Wu Lingfei and several people had already rushed to Alu, obviously intending to use the same trick to restrain Lin Sun. However, Lin Sun had no intention to help, and Alu didn't dodge either. This burly guy, who looked like a barbarian god, grinned at this moment and suddenly let out an earth-shaking roar. "I'll kill you bastards!" Boom! On his rock-like skin, phantoms of divine elephants emerged, as if suppressing the world, reflecting the powerful and monstrous chi of blood. A giant stick of black iron swept across, and the void was smashed into disorder, and the shrill sound was almost ear-splitting. With a bang, a young man, who was caught off guard, was abruptly smashed out. His body, like a flying sandbag, smashed into a copper pillar thousands of meters away, and his whole body was embedded in the pillar. Oh no! This guy has also recovered his combat power. Wu Lingfei's face darkened, and he felt a little uneasy. Go! And Xianjing, without hesitation, retreated and rushed out of the hall. Lin Sun was already very powerful. Before he was injured, he had shown his incredible combat power. Now that he was recovering from his injury, who could suppress him? Alu was also very powerful. Otherwise, he would have been besieged and killed by them before Lin Sun arrived. Now that even Alu had completely recovered his combat power, Lin Sun was like a tiger with wings, and the situation had been seriously reversed. There was no way to continue fighting. Want to leave? Have you asked your grandpa? Suddenly, Old Toad also attacked. With a roar, he rushed to Xianjing, his whole body shining with golden light, and his whole body was steaming with endless killing intent. If Lin Sun hadn't saved him before, he would have almost died. Now that he had completely recovered with the help of the Thunder Yuan spiritual fluid, how could he still hold back? He directly broke out. Rumble! In the palace, the battle became more and more fierce. Divine lights collided, and treasure lights rose. However, the situation was indeed completely different from before. Lin Sun, Old Toad, and Alu joined forces, and their momentum was like a rainbow. They rushed to kill a strong enemy, and each of them showed almost abnormal combat power. Lin Sun used the strongest killing power, and with the devouring star way, he swept through the battlefield. Old Toad and Alu weren't inferior. Old Toad was a descendant of the three-legged golden toad, a veritable ancient freak, and had mastered the world-shaking devouring sun and spitting moon skill. Alu was suspected to be related to the bloodline of the ancient dragon elephant war emperor. He had mastered the supreme emperor world suppression scripture and walked the path of becoming a sage. His strength could be said to be abnormal. The three attacked together, and it was like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. It was completely different from before. Puff, puff, puff. In just a moment, another 7 or 8 powerhouses died miserably. When they were alive, they were all geniuses who could look down on others. But after death, everything vanished into thin air, turning into nothingness. Looking at the battlefield from the beginning of the battle until now, there were originally 26 powerhouses from different orthodoxies. Being able to enter the Divine Fire Palace showed how extraordinary they were. But now, there were only 8 people left standing in the battlefield. In other words, more than half of the powerhouses were now either dead, seriously injured, or on the verge of death. At this moment, even Wu Lingfei was terrified, and he turned to flee. The other powerhouses had long been scared out of their wits, and they fled without hesitation as well. Demon God Lin alone was already terrifying enough. Now that there were 2 more helpers, there was no way they could continue fighting. "Where do you think you're going?" Lin Sun shouted. He took out the broken blade and chased after them with Old Toad and Alu. Puff! The man holding the blood-red scythe was cut in half by the broken blade. At the same time, Alu and Old Toad worked together to kill another powerhouse. When they reached the door of the palace, Wu Lingfei and the other 5 powerhouses despaired to find that the tightly shut door couldn't be opened. No matter how they attacked, they couldn't move it at all. "No! How can this be?" Furious roars rang out. Wu Lingfei and the others were about to go crazy, and their eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. No matter how they racked their brains, they would never have imagined that this mysterious palace was a layout where one could only enter but not leave. In the distance, Lin Sun, Old Toad, and Alu were already rushing over like killing gods. Chapter 1160. Inside the palace, broken corpses were everywhere, and blood was bright red and glaring. The air was still permeated with a horrifying murderous aura and a pungent smell of blood. The bloody scenes were like paintings of purgatory with thick ink and heavy colors. Lin Sun, Old Toad, and Alu were like 3 gods of death in a purgatory painting. Wrapped in blood and murderous intent, they were terrifying. Why? What the hell is this place? Wu Lingfei and the other 6 powerhouses were still roaring angrily, but the palace gate was tightly shut and couldn't be shaken at all. This is the greatest place of fortune in the realm of burning immortals, and is suspected to be related to a supreme figure who calls himself Burning Immortals. You should feel lucky to die here. Old Toad smiled, but its golden eyes were as cold as ice. He wouldn't forget his previous experience of hanging by a thread. Burning immortals? Who dared to call themselves immortals? Wu Lingfei and the others' faces changed, and their hearts trembled. Even Lin Sun and Alu were slightly stunned. Burning immortals? This title was undoubtedly very domineering and had the power to intimidate people. You 3, we admit defeat this time and are willing to pay enough compensation in exchange for our lives. Will you let us go this time? A man with pale green skin and a strange demonic flower tattoo on his cheek took a deep breath and spoke in a low voice. This was a top figure of the Kunmu clan. Impossible. Old Toad flatly refused. Even though they had already known this would be the result, Old Toad's resolute attitude still made Wu Lingfei and the others' hearts sink. Since that's the case, let's fight to the death. The man from the Kunmu clan suddenly took a deep breath, and a lantern made of strange yellow vines appeared in his palm. As soon as it appeared, this yellow vine lantern, which was shaped like a cauldron, overflowed with a holy aura. The lantern was enshrouded with holy fire, as if a god was sitting inside. A holy treasure. Lin Sun and Alu's pupils shrank. But Old Toad smiled, and his lips curved in a mysterious arc. Idiot, didn't your elders tell you before you came that holiness doesn't exist in the absolute domain? He put his hands behind his back, very calm, and stared at the yellow vine lantern with a hint of regret and regret. The domain of absolute apex, divinity, did not exist. This was an iron law. All the experts present here were from the various Grandau sects. So how could they possibly not have heard of such a supreme iron law before they came here? We're going to die anyway. If we don't give it our all, how can we be content? The experts of the Kuan-Wood tribe looked cold and determined. Then go all out. Old Toad spoke casually with a hint of pity. The powerful being from the Kuan-Wood tribe couldn't take it anymore. He let out a loud roar, and the aura around him rose to its peak. In his hand, the lantern made of yellow vines, which looked like a cauldron, suddenly shone brightly. Boom! The sacred flame was surging, but it was like a lantern, yet it seemed like it was going to light up the entire world. Wu Lingfei and the others retreated, their expressions uncertain. In the distance, the old toad was calm and collected. It just sent a voice transmission to Lin Sun and Alu. The holy doesn't exist in the absolute domain. This isn't a lie. Anything related to the holy aura will be erased when it's used. This has happened more than once in ancient times. As he spoke, the powerful being from the Kuan-Wood tribe had already attacked. The yellow vine lantern emitted a wisp of sacred flame, which made his face look especially ferocious and resentful. Of course, he also knew that the holy doesn't exist. Otherwise, he would have used the saint artifact long ago and wouldn't have waited until now. At this moment, he was at the end of his rope and had fallen into a desperate situation. He had placed all his hopes on the saint artifact in his hand. What if he could kill his opponent? Even a corner dog would jump over a wall, let alone a human. Boom! However, an unforeseen event happened very quickly. As soon as the wisp of sacred flame appeared, before it could display its holy aura, a formless power of the rules of order suddenly appeared in the void. At that moment, everyone held their breaths. Their hearts were filled with shock, and they had the urge to kneel down and worship it. The reason was that this power of the rules of order was too supreme and unparalleled. It was unprecedentedly terrifying. Facing it was like an ant looking up to a god. Whoosh! The wisp of sacred flame was extinguished. The powerful being from the Kuan-Wood tribe's expression changed drastically. He let out a roar and activated the yellow vine lantern with all his might. However, under the astounded gazes of everyone present, this saint artifact of extraordinary origins and extraordinary might actually crumbled soundlessly like a piece of paper. After that, it transformed into a gorgeous rain of sacred light. In the end, it was like a shapeless hand had swiped through space, and the rain of sacred light had instantly vanished without a trace. There was no intense battle that shook the heavens and the earth, nor was there any possibility of struggling. Before the shapeless energy of the rules of order, a saint artifact that could crush the world had been obliterated just like that. Everyone felt their bodies go cold, and they felt as if they'd fallen into an icy pit. What kind of supreme and terrifying power of order was this? That's a saint artifact. It was completely obliterated just like that, and not even a trace of its aura was left behind. No, the powerful being from the Kuan-Wood tribe let out a heart-wrenching roar, and he seemed as if he'd been struck by lightning. The destruction of a saint artifact caused him to be unable to endure such a blow, and he suddenly coughed up blood while his body was on the verge of collapse. A saint artifact? How could that be ordinary? Idiot, your elders allowed you to bring this treasure into the apex domain. But they must have warned you that you're only allowed to use this treasure to collect some special divine materials and opportunities, and merely to use it as a storage magic treasure. But obviously, your stupidity has caused this saint artifact to be destroyed. The old toad's words were sarcastic, and there was also a kind of pain in his heart. He'd already recognized the origin of the yellow vine lantern, and he felt a wave of regret when he saw such a saint artifact being destroyed. Pooh! The powerful being from the Kuan-Wood tribe coughed up a large mouthful of blood, and his face was ashen, and his eyes were dim. Since you knew this would happen, why didn't you warn me, and Big Brother? Alu was furious. The old toad said angrily, "Before entering the apex domain, I'd already told all of you that no matter what, you can't use the saint artifact." Lin Sun nodded, and he did remember this. He even remembered that the old toad had once said that very few people would bring saint artifacts into the apex domain to contend for hegemony, because once a person died, the saint artifacts they left behind would also be erased. At that time, Lin Sun had the intention of hiding the wordless pagoda, the great Tao immeasurable bottle, and a vast universe arc in the outside world. But after thinking about it, he didn't do so in the end. After all, if he died in the apex domain, these saint artifacts would either be buried or discovered and controlled by other practitioners, and then they would be taken advantage of by others. At this time, witnessing the destruction of the yellow vine lantern, Lin Sun was more and more aware of the horror of the iron law that saints don't exist. To everyone's surprise, the powerful being from the Kuan-Wood tribe seemed to be unable to bear such a blow. At this time, he went completely crazy and became possessed by the devil. Pooh! In the end, he spat out a mouthful of blood, and then his eyes were wide open. He fell to the ground with his head raised and died completely. Did he anger himself to death? Alu was stunned. His Taoist heart has collapsed. It's very easy to be affected when one is in a desperate situation. Now that the saint artifact has been destroyed, all his thoughts have been destroyed. It's just that I didn't expect that this guy couldn't bear such a blow. The old toad said casually, with such a mentality, even if he's alive, he's doomed to not be the king of the apex domain. Cut the crap. Let's get rid of these guys first. Although it was just a conversation, Lin Sun didn't relax his vigilance. The more he waited, the more dangerous it was. He needed to be on guard against the counterattack before his death. Boom! It seemed that Lin Sun's guess was right. Before he finished speaking, Wu Lingfei had already launched a brazen attack. He turned into a golden crow with dazzling golden flames flowing on his wings. He pounced on Lin Sun. The raging flames seemed to be incinerating everything. From afar, it looked like a golden sun burning here. Undoubtedly, this was Wu Lingfei's most powerful blow. It had the determination and ruthlessness of destroying everything indiscriminately. Unfortunately, Lin Sun was already on guard, so he wouldn't let Wu Lingfei get what he wanted. Swish! The long-prepared broken sword swept up, and the impermanence cut swept out. It was like the arrival of the Great Way, illusory and unpredictable. Whoosh in a flash, the golden crow, who had not yet arrived, had one of its wings cut off. Blood rained down. On one side, Alu waved his giant steel rod and took the opportunity to smash the golden crow's head. The seventh prince of the golden crow, a peerless ancient freak, died suddenly. Kill! Although the others were in despair, no one was willing to sit still and wait for death. They rushed forward with a roar. However, it was destined to be in vain. Puff! Without any suspense, the man in the silver robe was killed by Lin Sun first. His body was cut in half, and he fell to the ground, blood flowing. His true form was revealed. It was a silver mystic bird. At the same time, in another direction, Old Toad and Alu were showing their might. The two joined forces and seemed to be able to sweep through everything. Before long, another opponent was killed. His body was smashed and blood rained down. Lin Sun, Old Toad, and Alu were destined to show no mercy. Previously, they had been besieged, surrounded by danger, and lingering between life and death. They had long accumulated a bellyful of hatred. How could they show mercy? In just a moment, the remaining 5 people were killed by Lin Sun and the others. Blood rained down on the ground. Even at death's door, they were filled with endless unwillingness. But it wasn't over yet. In the previous battle, many opponents had been knocked unconscious and lost the ability to fight, but they didn't die. Without waiting for Lin Sun's order, Alu and Old Toad had already taken action to check the battlefield and kill those who were still alive. Lin Sun watched all this calmly and didn't intervene. He knew that Alu and Old Toad needed to vent. When they were trapped and on the verge of despair, they had accumulated too much anger and hatred in their hearts. Looking at the blood all over the ground, Lin Sun felt a little strange. All the strong people who could enter the Divine Fire Palace had set foot on the peak of the Tao and were expected to reach the peak of the King Realm by the forces behind them. In the outside world, they were all famous and dazzling figures, but with their deaths, everything they had in life was doomed to disappear. This was the struggle for the Tao, and it was very cruel. Lin Sun knew very well that if they were killed today, no matter how much reputation and hope they had in life, they were doomed to vanish after death. Chapter 1161. 26 masters were all dead. Wu Lingfei, the seventh prince of the Golden Crow, Shanglan, the descendant of the Sea Spirit clan, Ling Hua, the successor of the Xuandu Orthodoxy, and Liang Xuan, the successor of the Beast Spirit Mountain. The corpses of some of the masters revealed their original appearance, including a mountainous lion camel, a dark bird with dark blue wings, and a tree with branches, all of which were damaged and stained with blood. It was a ghastly sight. Every loss of such masters in the outside world was enough to cause a great earthquake. However, within the Divine Fire Palace, there were corpses strewn all over the ground. Anyone who saw this would definitely feel a chill in their hearts and be horrified. Lin Sun was completely relaxed in this bloody place. He looked around and said to himself, "There are a lot of good ingredients here." If other practitioners heard this, they would definitely shudder with fear. But Alu and Old Toad's eyes lit up at the same time, and they said, "Big Brother is right. These spoils of war must not be wasted." Next, it was time to clean up the spoils. These were all top figures of various forces, and they had a lot of good things with them. Damn, is this turquoise condensing ointment? This is a good treasure. It can play a wonderful role in condensing the Tao seed of self. It's too extravagant. There is actually a pot of Diun soul cleansing ointment. Wait, these are 3 king herbs. Old Toad's excited shout rang out from time to time in the hall. As a descendant of the 3-legged golden toad, he was very familiar with the treasures between heaven and earth, and could distinguish good and bad at a glance. Soon, he had collected a pile of treasures, which were overflowing with colorful light, illuminating the whole hall. Among them were king herbs, divine materials, elixirs, rare treasures. It was a dazzling lineup. In the outside world, each of them was enough to make people covet and covet. What's this? A lackey? Alu picked up a 2-foot-long treasure as thick as a child's arm, and with a curious look, he was going to roast it. Old Toad rushed over with a howl, grabbed the thing, and scolded, "What lackey? This is Ghost King Ganoderma. After becoming a king, this thing can be used to temper the foundation of kingship. Its value is immeasurable." Alu was amazed and couldn't help asking, "Is there anything I can use?" "Of course, but get out of my way or you'll damage the treasure." Old Toad glared at him. After a while, Old Toad finally finished collecting the spoils of war and said with a satisfied look, "Damn it, I'm rich now. Lin Sun, I have a suggestion. How about we specialize in robbing in the future? Think about it. Which one of those fellows from the major forces isn't a fat sheep? If I don't take advantage of them, I would be letting down this opportunity bestowed by the heavens." Alu stroked his chin and deeply agreed. "I agree." The corners of Lin Sun's mouth twitched, and he was puzzled. Did he lead them astray, or were their hearts so black? However, this suggestion was really not bad. Lin Sun was moved as well. He was clearly aware that there was no lack of experts amongst the Apex region that wished for nothing more than to kill him. If I really have a chance to meet him, I can definitely rob him. After counting the spoils, Lin Sun put them all away. Unconvinced, Old Toad asked Alu. All the spoils of war went into his pocket. "Don't you think he's going overboard?" Alu grinned. "I don't think Big Brother will treat me unfairly." Old Toad rolled its eyes. "Look at you, a lackey. You don't have any ambition at all." Smack! As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Sun slapped him on the back of the head. He grimaced in pain and didn't dare clamor anymore. "Alu, can I have a look at that giant stick of yours?" Old Toad suddenly asked. Lin Sun was startled, and then his heart skipped a beat. Before, they had all thought that Alu's giant wrought iron rod was an extremely powerful holy treasure, but now it seemed that it wasn't. Otherwise, under this iron law of no holy beings exist, this treasure would probably have been erased long ago, and there would be no way for Alu to use it. Perhaps Old Toad had noticed this, which was why it was curious. As if guarding against a thief, Alu said warily, "No." With that, he put away the treasure. "It's just a broken rod. Who cares about it?" Old Toad sneered. "If you don't care about it, you still want to see it? You're asking for it." Alu retorted sarcastically. Lin Sun frowned a little. Looking around the palace, he asked, "Old Toad, what on earth is this palace?" Old Toad was instantly excited. "A place of great fortune. You should have seen it when you came in just now. There are bronze statues of a green deer and a white crane sitting outside the palace. In ancient times, this was very particular. The deer and the crane represented the 6 directions, and the 6 directions represented heaven and earth in the 4 directions. At the same time, the eaves of the palace extended in all directions, representing the 8 extremes and 8 gods. According to Old Toad, this was a pattern of heaven and earth. I am the only one. Even a saint wouldn't dare set up a Taoist field like this easily, because if it was too heaven-defying, it was easy to suffer the wrath of heaven. I once entered this place in ancient times. At that time, this palace was still sealed and I couldn't enter at all." Old Toad's eyes were fanatical as he stared at the 108 bronze pillars in the palace. But now, it's completely different. The seal has disappeared, and this great fortune is destined to belong to us 3 brothers. "What fortune?" Alu couldn't help asking. "It's suspected to have something to do with a supreme figure who calls himself Burning Immortal. Of course, this is just my speculation. After all, this absolute domain is too mysterious, and no one knows its origin. I can only judge that the person who left this place back then was absolutely a powerful existence that could make all the heavens tremble." Old Toad suddenly got up, already a little impatient, and said, "Come with me." Saying this, he led Lin Sun and Alu to the end of the palace. It was empty here, with only a wall in front of them. The wall was made of fiery red jade and glowed brightly. Old Toad's golden pupils shone brightly, and his expression was excited and absent-minded. "If I'm right, inside this wall is the place where the fortune is hidden." Lin Sun and Alu were both stunned. They had sensed carefully and didn't find anything special about this wall. However, when Old Toad put his hand on the wall, an amazing scene appeared. A circle of strange power rippled out from the surface of the wall, and then a huge door emerged. There was only one figure engraved on this door, majestic, aloof, and like a god standing above the clouds. His back was to everyone, but even so, Lin Sun and the others still felt a kind of terrifying and oppressive momentum. They couldn't help but stiffen all over and tremble in their hearts. Too powerful. It was just a pattern of a back, but it seemed to fill the universe as supreme and supreme as a god. "Is he the burning immortal you mentioned?" Alu gasped. His legs were trembling, and he couldn't control them at all. It was an absolutely oppressive power that couldn't be resisted. "It should be." Old Toad took a deep breath and said, "You've also noticed that this is just a pattern, but its aura seems to be more powerful than that of Sage. It's conceivable that there must be a great fortune hidden in this door." Lin Sun agreed with this very much. He had seen how terrifying the power of a sage was. He had also followed that mysterious woman and seen the means of a sage's power. But compared with the aura of this back figure in front of him, those sages seemed a little dim. But compared with the mysterious woman, there was no comparison, because both of them had an unfathomable aura that couldn't be measured at all. "Forget it. Let's open this door and have a look first." As he said this, Old Toad had already stretched out his hand and pressed it against the door. However, his palm was still halfway to the door when he restrained himself. His expression flickered indeterminately as he said, "It's extremely likely that there's great fortune behind this door, but who knows what sort of dangers might be hidden within. Do you think we should push it open?" Lin Sun and Alu fell into silence and thought. The greater the fortune, the harder it was to get it, and it was very likely to be accompanied by unpredictable dangers. This was common sense in cultivation. Was there a fortuitous opportunity or danger hidden behind this door? No one was sure. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. "If you are destined to be with me, you can inherit the fortune inside. If you're not destined to be with me, you will die after entering this door." The voice seemed to come from above the clouds, ethereal and indifferent, revealing a power that went straight to the heart, making Lin Sun and the others tremble and their faces change suddenly. The figure on the door actually spoke at this moment, which was unexpected. "Senior, may I ask, where does the fate come from?" Old Toad swallowed hard and asked cautiously to sound out the voice. "In ancient times, there were 108 immortal generals who followed me to conquer Jotian City. Their descendants are all destined to be with me." The ethereal voice sounded again. Along with the voice, the 108 bronze pillars distributed in this hall all buzzed at this moment, and vivid figures emerged on their surface one after another. Some raised their blades and roared towards the sky. They had 9 heads, their magical images shocking the world. Some looked like dragons, huge figures coiled in the starry sky, each scale as big as a star, shining with divine light. Some wore Taoist robes, but had cranes' heads and wind and thunder wings on their backs, emitting a monstrous, murderous aura that made the sun and the moon dim. And some, each of them came from different tribes and looked strange, but without exception, their power was as terrible as that of demons. There were 108 in total. Obviously, they were the 108 immortal generals, mentioned by the ethereal voice. Looking at them, Alu couldn't help but be disappointed. There were no humans among them at all. Didn't this mean that he had no fate with the fortune inside the door? Lin Sun was shocked and couldn't help frowning. These immortal generals were all lifelike figures with terrifying power. But Lin Sun also found that there seemed to be no humans among them. Are they our ancestors? Suddenly, Old Toad shouted in a trembling voice, staring at one of the bronze bells with a look of disbelief. Chapter 1162. The Old Toad was stunned and excited. The portrait of a handsome and enchanting man emerged on the towering red copper pillar. His white hair was flying, his golden eyes were shining, and his lips were smiling. He was surrounded by the sun and the moon, and on his slender white palm, there was a golden copper coin with wings on both sides. At first glance, the man was so handsome that he was breathtaking, and when perceived carefully, there was a kind of undisguised arrogance that looked down on the world. "This is the ancestor of my clan. There's no mistake." The Old Toad trembled with disbelief. Lin Sun and Alu couldn't calm down either. This was a mysterious palace in the Absolute Summit Domain, suspected to be related to a burning immortal. What did it mean that the ancestor of the 3-legged golden toad appeared here? On the wall in the distance, a proud and imposing figure stood with his back to all living beings. He once said that these 108 immortal generals had fought with him in the 9 heavens and 10 earths. There was no doubt that the ancestor of the 3-legged golden toad was also one of the 108 immortal generals. Based on this speculation, the origin of the other immortal generals was absolutely not small. It was very likely that they were the ancestors of each clan. But it was also because of this that the background of the figure on the wall was even more extraordinary. Who was he? What kind of power did he have to make 108 ancestors from different clans willing to fight with him? The more they thought about it, the more shocked they were. "Old Toad, what are you doing? You are destined to meet this fortune." Alu slapped the Old Toad on the shoulder with a face full of envy. The Old Toad was sober, but there was not much excitement or joy. Instead, it said with a complicated expression, "In my memory, the ancestor has always been like a mystery. There is almost no record of him in the bloodline of our clan. I never thought that I would find some clues here." The voice was low, like joy and sorrow. Lin Sun said, "Last time you entered the Absolute Summit Domain, you found this place. Now you come here again. It seems that everything is predestined. This is fate." Old Toad sighed and said with a sigh, "Sigh, what fate? I'm just basking in my ancestors' light. If he hadn't followed that great figure to battle back then, how could I have had the opportunity to obtain this creation today?" After a pause, he glanced at Lin Sun and Alu and said, "Don't be envious. Others rely on their fathers, but I can only rely on my ancestors. Fortunately, my ancestors are not bad. At the end of his speech, this fellow actually began to show off again, immensely pleased with himself. Alu rolled his eyes and looked at him in disdain. Lin Sun had an impulse to beat this guy. Just now, he was sighing and sentimental, but in the twinkling of an eye, he changed into a hateful person. You're an interesting little toad. Suddenly, a voice that seemed to float down from the clouds resounded. Accompanied by the voice, an illusory figure suddenly appeared. His figure seemed to be formed by a rain of light, dreamlike and illusory, and his appearance also seemed vague. One could only see that his figure was extremely straight and dignified, like a lonely mountain peak that soared into the sky. The only thing that could be seen clearly was a pair of eyes. As they opened and closed, it seemed as if millions of stars were disappearing, rolling, and evaporating in the void, and the grand phenomena of the changing of the universe and the birth and death of all things were reflected in them. Merely being swept by his gaze made Lin Sun and the other souls palpitate and their hair stand on end. It seemed as if their entire bodies had been seen through. But soon, the other party withdrew his gaze, and his eyes showed a kind of extreme tranquility without a trace of ripples, like an ancient well that seemed to be able to reflect the heavens. The hall was silent. The figures of Lin Sun and the others froze there, feeling a kind of incomparable oppression and awe, and they didn't dare to believe it. This is only a wisp of the rule power that belongs to me. You don't have to be so nervous, said the illusory figure. Accompanied by the voice, the oppressive atmosphere in the hall was swept away in an instant, and a kind of peaceful and tranquil atmosphere appeared in the air, causing people to involuntarily feel at ease as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. This kind of change caused the hearts of Lin Sun and the others to tumble. It seemed that so long as this illusory figure was willing, everything in the world would change according to his happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy. This was simply like the real ruler of the world. The great era has come. The man's gaze swept over the traces of blood in the hall, and he couldn't help but sigh lightly. He looked at the old toad and said, "When we left the ancient desolation that year, I was worried that it would be dangerous and that accidents would occur, so I left my mantle and fortune here for the sake of passing on the torch. Even if we died in a foreign land, the inheritance wouldn't be cut off. Your ancestor was a genius of a generation. He treated me with sincerity and once fought side by side with me to conquer the world. Since you're the descendant of an old friend, the fortune here naturally belongs to you." The old toad was stunned and couldn't help asking, "Senior, my ancestor." The man shook his head and said, "You don't need to ask. When you have a chance to leave the ancient desolation in the future, you will naturally know where we went. Go. The great era has come, and the opportunity to become a peerless king has also opened. Back then, we didn't set foot in this realm either. I hope you can go further than us." With that, he waved his sleeve, and the old toad's figure was wrapped by an invisible force, rushed into the door on the wall, and disappeared. From beginning to end, the old toad didn't even have a chance to refuse. Seeing this, Lin Sun and Alu were shocked, but both of them could see that this was the fortune of the old toad, and there should be no danger. "Senior, what do you think of my aptitude?" Alu asked with a salivating face. The man smiled faintly. "You practice the supreme Emperor World Suppression Scripture, which is not fated with me. If possible, I suggest you go to the ancient land of Wanxiang. Maybe you will gain something there." The ancient land of Wanxiang. Alu murmured and firmly remembered the name. This time, even Lin Sun couldn't calm down. He came to the absolute summit domain to become a peerless king. But the absolute summit domain was too big, and it was also divided into 3,000 worlds and the upper 9 realms, with countless opportunities and fortunes. If there was no one to guide him, it was almost no different from looking for a needle in a haystack to find a fortune that suited him. As for you, the man looked at Lin Sun. Lin Sun's heart was suddenly in his throat, full of expectation. Your path. A strange luster suddenly emerged in the man's quiet eyes. He stared at Lin Sun and didn't speak for a long time. It seemed that he had encountered a problem. and he seemed to be lost in thought. Being stared at, Lin Sun felt uncomfortable all over, and he couldn't help but feel uneasy. The atmosphere in the hall also became silent. Alu also felt that something was wrong. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought, but finally held back. After a long time, the man said, "Your path can only be walked by yourself. It is not fated with me, and I can't guide you." There was a trace of imperceptible strangeness in his voice. Lin Sun, who was full of expectation, was stunned, and then immediately cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Senior." "Why thank me?" The man was surprised. "This is already a kind of guidance," Lin Sun said seriously. He wasn't lying. From a long time ago, he had been seeking the path of extreme transformation and wanted to transcend the past and cast a different path from the world. The man suddenly roared with laughter and said, "You remind me of Battle Emperor Star Obscurity. But it's very obvious that you and Battle Emperor Star Obscurity are different, and your path towards the Tao is bound to be different from his. I really look forward to what sort of path you'll take." Lin Sun smiled slightly. "I was fortunate to meet a golden cicada, and he once chatted with me and said something similar." The man was silent for a while and said, "Chatting?" Lin Sun nodded. He remembered what the golden cicada had said. Chatting was naturally about heaven. The existence of heaven, like the incarnation of Tao, was untouchable and far away. If you want to walk on your own path, you must understand and explore it. Didn't the golden cicada tell you what price you need to pay if you want to walk on the path of Tao? The man asked. Lin Sun thought and said, "It only said that fate is like an illusion. It's better to follow your heart's desire. If you are obsessed with it, you will fall behind." The man said calmly, "I knew it." He looked at Lin Sun again and said, "Since ancient times, I don't know how many talents like you want to blaze a new path on the path of Tao, but only a few of them can really do it. On the contrary, because of pursuing such a path, they have encountered unpredictable blows. If it's light, they will be possessed by the devil. If it's serious, they will die. You should be careful." Lin Sun looked calm and said, "Since I pursue this path, I have no fear or regret." "No fear or regret." The man laughed and said, "I underestimated the young people in the world today. Good, good, the modern people in the world are better than the ancient people. The fire of Tao is not extinguished, and the path of Tao is expected. My little friend, can you tell me your name?" "Lin Sun." The man nodded and said, "People call me Burning Immortal, but very few people know my name. If you have a chance to enter the starry ancient path in the future and encounter trouble, you can tell me my name. Remember, my name is Chun Linkong." After saying that, the man laughed up to the sky and disappeared like a rain of light. Chun Linkong. The three words, like an invisible domineering aura, resounded through the hall and made the 108 bronze pillars buzz and tremble, resonating with it. Burning Immortal, Chun Linkong. Lin Sun silently remembered this name and the starry ancient path, because he clearly remembered that Old Toad once said that if he wanted to enter the Kunlun ruins, one of the 4 great ancient ruins, he had to pass through this starry ancient path. Chun? At the same time, Alu scratched his ears and cheeks. I heard the old bastard say that it seems to be an extremely ancient surname, but no matter how hard I try, I can't remember it. Lin Sun couldn't help asking, "Is the surname Chun very powerful?" Ah Lu shook his head. "I only heard the old bastard mention it occasionally. Maybe it's very powerful. Didn't you hear that Burning Immortal surname is Chun?" As the two talked, an invisible force suddenly appeared in the hall, wrapped them up, and rushed out of the hall. And the closed door opened silently at this moment. Chapter 1163. Immortal Incineration City. While the matter of the Golden Crow lineage being robbed by Fiend Celestial Lin was still causing an uproar, an astounding piece of news spread. Demon God Lin entered Finchin Valley alone and is about to be killed by the top figures of various orthodoxies. A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples, and the entire city boiled over. Let's go and take a look. Is Demon God Lin going to be in trouble after just entering the absolute domain? Soon, the descendants of some major forces set off for Finchin Valley to find out what was going on. When they arrived at Finchen Valley, they discovered that the battle had taken place in a mysterious palace. There was no way to know if demon god Lin had been killed. Therefore, the newly arrived cultivators had to wait outside. There are more than 20 top figures, including 7th Prince of Golden Crow Wu Lingfei, Xuyin of Beast Spirit Mountain, and Fairy Miaohua of Xuandu Orthodoxy. I'm afraid demon god Lin won't be able to walk out alive. Many cultivators were alarmed when they learned of the situation in the palace. With so many experts gathered, even other top talents would not be able to withstand it, let alone demon god Lin. This demon god Lin is really chivalrous. To save a friend, he risked his life. It's definitely a blessing to be friends with him. Someone sighed, which attracted many people's agreement. Despite knowing that it was a dangerous place, he still risked his life to save his friend. Such an action was enough to move anyone. No, it's also a misfortune to be friends with him. Don't forget, this fellow has countless enemies. Whoever is related to him will have to bear the consequences of being implicated. Someone sneered and glared at Lin's son. This was an expert of the Golden Crow lineage. He gritted his teeth. Lin's son had robbed their territory, which made them go crazy with hatred. No matter what, he's destined to die. Lu Chuan of Beast Spirit Mountain, Gao Xian of Xuandu Orthodoxy, and others had also come. They were full of expectations and were very conceited. Demon god Lin was too terrifying. He was unscrupulous and his combat strength was heaven-defying. He even dared to ignore the rules and act unconventionally, starting a massacre in a mortal incineration ancient city. If he was alive, if he continued to run amok like that, it was unimaginable. Therefore, they were eager for Lin's son to be killed. The palace gate is open, my God, that's... Suddenly, someone cried out in alarm, and it caused a commotion. After that, everyone saw that the door to the Divine Flame Palace had silently opened at some point in time. Then, 2 figures walked out from within. A figure that was as majestic as a mountain and as rough as a barbarian could be seen. Shockingly, it was Alu. Many people clearly remembered that Alu had been trapped together with Old Toad, which was why demon god Lin had come to rescue him. However, no one had expected that he would actually walk out alive. Demon god Lin. Almost at the same time, someone cried out involuntarily and was so shocked that he almost jumped up. Beside Alu was a young man in a moon-white robe. His figure was tall and straight, and his black hair was flying in the air. It was Lin's son, whom most people believed to be dead. Is this a ghost? Some of the women's expressions changed drastically. Impossible. How could this be? The successors of the Golden Crow tribe, the 10,000 Beast spiritual mountain, the Xiandu Taoism, and the others felt like they had been struck by lightning. Their eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. If Fiend God Lin was still alive, then what about the others? At the thought of this, many of the cultivators present felt their hearts tremble. Some even stretched their necks, hoping to see the scene inside the palace. Unfortunately, the palace's doors had already closed silently. Fellow Taoist Lin, where are the others? Someone mustered up the courage to ask. Lin Sun first swept his gaze across the crowd before saying, "They're all fighting for the fortuitous encounters. My skills are inferior, so I can only retreat first." Although that was what he said, there was not a hint of dejection or disappointment in his expression. This made many cultivators suspicious. Based on what they knew, Wu Lingfei and the other 26 peak figures would definitely not let Lin Sun leave so easily. What about your other friend? Someone asked in an indirect manner. He got lucky and is also fighting for the fortuitous encounters. Alu answered in a low, muffled voice. This was very hard to believe. The expressions of the experts of the Golden Crow lineage changed indeterminately. This outcome had completely exceeded their expectations and caught them off guard. Big brother, I feel terrible for not obtaining the fortuitous encounters and would like to vent it out. As Alu spoke, he unscrupulously sized up the experts of the Golden Crow lineage, causing them to shudder with fear. Forget it, I'll prepare something delicious for you tonight. This is a treatment that Old Toad can enjoy. Lin Sun shook his head. There were so many cultivators present that it was difficult to distinguish how many were enemies. All right. Alu's eyes lit up. With that, the two walked out of the valley. Stop. Lu Chuan of the Beast Spirit Mountain stood out and said coldly, "Are you leaving without a clear explanation?" At the same time, Gao Xian of Xuandu Orthodoxy also looked over with an unfriendly expression. They all had a premonition that something was wrong. Clear explanation? Sure, why don't I go with you to your territory in the city and give you a good explanation? Lin Sun asked with a smile. Lu Chuan and Gao Xian's expressions changed abruptly at his words. They recalled the scene of Lin Sun ransacking the treasury of the Golden Crow lineage. Lin Sun, your attitude is very wrong. We just want to ask about the palace, but you threaten us. Are you really going to make life difficult for all the cultivators in the entire realm of burning immortal level? A tall and thin man snorted coldly. He had green hair and was obviously from the Sea Soul tribe, just like Shang Lan who died in Lin Sun's hands. Who do you think you are? You can speak for everyone in one sentence? Get out of here if you don't want to die. Lin Sun left these words and ignored him. He walked straight out of the valley with Alu. The tall and thin man flew into a rage, but he hesitated at the thought of Lin Sun's terrible combat strength. What chilled him most was that no one dared to intercept Lin Sun during the whole process. If he jumped out, he would be the burr that sticks out. Trash, haha. Alu's disdainful laughter almost made the tall and thin man's lungs explode. His face turned green, but he managed to restrain himself in the end. Even when the two of them left, no one dared to stop them. This was the power of killing. In the ancient city of burning immortal level, Lin Sun ignored the rules, stepped into the territory of Golden Crow, killed decisively, and looted the place. Under such circumstances, who would be tired of living and dare to go against him? I'm afraid that only peerless figures like Qiliang Xiao, Sanus Lin Shui, Yun Qingbai, and Gu Fozi can suppress Demon God Lin. Someone sighed. Meanwhile, the Golden Crow tribe, the Orthodoxy of Xiandu, the 10,000 B Spiritual Mountain, and the other factions wore terrible expressions. If the seventh prince was here, how could he be so arrogant? A strong Golden Crow said angrily, "What on earth happened in the palace? Why could Demon God Lin walk out of it unscathed?" Even more people were puzzled and bewildered. Let me have a look. A figure bathed in blue divine light walked out and floated towards the divine fire palace in the distance. Zhou Qingyun. Many people's pupils shrank as they recognized the man. He was a peerless genius from the Star Fantasy Cave in the Saint Hermit Place. Wen Qingyun was also blocked when he passed by a pair of deer and crane statues in front of the palace. It took him some effort to pass. This scene was witnessed by all the cultivators that were waiting here since the beginning, and their hearts roiled. Because compared to Demon God Lin's test, Zhou Qingyun, this peerless genius from the Saint Hermit Place, seemed to be slightly inferior. The door of the palace opened silently. Under the expectant gazes of the crowd, Zhou Qingyun unexpectedly did not enter. This was because he saw blood and severed limbs all over the ground. It was bloody like a picture of purgatory. Hiss! Zhou Qingyun gasped, and his expression changed drastically. He finally understood why only Demon God Lin and Alu walked out in the end. It was because everyone else had died inside, and from the marks on the ground, it was obvious that a fierce battle had broken out. 26 peerless figures, including the seventh prince of Golden Crow, Wu Lingfei, were they all killed by Demon God Lin. A layer of coldness couldn't help but surge up into Zhou Qingyun's heart, and his hands and feet turned icy cold. At the same time, the other cultivators seized this opportunity to finally see the bloody scenes in the palace clearly. The atmosphere in the surroundings became deathly silent at first, and then it was a complete uproar. It was like an uproar, and countless screams, exclamations, and astounded voices resounded. Especially the Golden Crow lineage, the Xuandu Orthodoxy, the Myriad Bee Spirit Mountain, the Ocean Soul Group, and so on and so forth. All of them couldn't bear such a blow and started howling. Dead. All of them were dead. This blow was too great, and it caused everyone's vision to darken and almost go mad. On the other hand, Some other cultivators were similarly shocked to the point they couldn't calm down for a long time. Was all of this the work of demon god Lin? When Lin and Alu returned to the ancient city of immortal incineration, it caused another uproar. Everyone who saw Lin seemed as if they'd seen a ghost. Lin paid no attention to all of this, and he intended to find a place to stay first. When we entered the city yesterday, Old Toad said that there's a tower and a tower in the city, and both of them are named after peaks. Each has its own secrets. If you want to go to the upper 9 realms, you must pass the test of the Tower of the Apex. A passage will appear in the Tower of the Apex 1 year later. At that time, only the top 1,000 strong practitioners can enter the upper 9 realms through this passage. If you want to enter other areas of the 3 realms, you need to rely on the power of the Tower of the Apex to obtain its approval, and then you'll have the qualification to enter other realms to seek opportunities. On the way, Alu mentioned an important thing to Lin. Lin Sun was surprised. It was the first time he'd heard of the Tower of the Apex and the Tower of the Apex. So, there should be such a tower and a tower in each of the 3 realms. Lin Sun was lost in thought. Exactly. Speaking of this, Alu pointed to the distance and said, "Look, big brother, that's the Tower of the Apex." Lin Sun looked up and saw a tall building in the center of the city. It towered into the sky, extremely lofty and magnificent, and its whole body was filled with an ancient aura, as if it had stood there for countless years and was accustomed to the vicissitudes of life. Chapter 1164. The Tower of the Apex. It towered into the sky and was extremely magnificent. There was a similar tower in every realm, in which there was a battle test. Only those who ranked in the top 1,000 were qualified to enter the upper 9 realms through the passage opened by this tower, after a year, to explore opportunities and opportunities. This also meant that within this year, all the experts who were interested in entering the upper 9 realms would enter this tower and accept the test. Of course, there was another way to enter the upper 9 realms. It was to smoothly advance into the King realm within a year. From a distance, it could be seen that many cultivators were entering the Tower of the Apex, and there were also many cultivators coming out of the Tower of the Apex. The ranking changes every day. Unless you can rank in the top 100, otherwise, even if you can rank in the top 1,000, there's a possibility that you will be eliminated at any time. Some people were discussing and talking. Work hard. There are many opportunities in the sky-burning realm. As long as you can grasp them, it is not impossible for your strength to improve by leaps and bounds. Alas, it's too difficult. There are millions of cultivators entering the sky-burning realm this time, but only 1,000 people are qualified to enter the upper 9 realms. How cruel the competition is. I don't have any hope. As long as I can see some opportunities and smoothly advance to the King realm, I'll be very satisfied. Advance to the King realm? Haha. Not to mention the peak of the Monarch realm. Merely stepping into the Monarch realm isn't something that just anyone can accomplish. There are many people in the half-step King realm in this world. Although they are famous, they are all failures in advancing to the King realm. There is only 1 in 1,000 who can really set foot in the King realm, even among the heavenly talents. No, this is the domain of the Apex. There are many opportunities, and it is destined to be easier to advance to the King realm here than in the outside world. In the distance, Lin Sun and Alu were looking at the domain of the Apex. After hearing these discussions, they were not shaken. If they wanted to become King realm, they could have done it very early. But their goal was not this. If they wanted to become king, they had to become the king of the Apex. As for entering the top 1,000 of the Tower of the Apex, Lin Sun and Alu were still sure that they could do it. "Brother, do you want to go and play now?" Alu laughed. "Maybe later." Lin Sun planned to find a place to have a rest first. At the same time, he would sort out his own path of cultivation in preparation for casting his own Tao seed. After listening to burning immortal Chun Lin Kong's words, Lin Sun completely realized that he could only seek his own way. To put it simply, there were 4 words: don't ask for help from others. As for the Pavilion of Absolute Apex, he would have plenty of opportunities to challenge it within a year. Lin Sun was quite interested in the Tower of Apex. As long as one obtained the tower's approval, They would be able to enter the other regions of the 3,000 worlds to seek opportunities. This was tantamount to providing a path for the cultivators that were scattered across the 3,000 worlds to carry out cross-border operations. I wonder which realm Miss Jing Xian is in. Lin Sun suddenly thought of Zhao Jingxian. He shook his head and left with Alu. In a remote corner of the burning immortal city, Lin Sun changed his appearance and bought a courtyard from a practitioner at the price of a king herb. From this, one could see the value of the burning immortal city. Of course, only Lin Sun was willing to exchange a king herb for a courtyard. If it were other cultivators, they would rather live outside the city than waste a king herb on this. However, living in the city also had its advantages, such as inquiring about information and buying spiritual herbs and divine materials from other practitioners. Even during cultivation, he would be able to absorb even purer and richer spiritual energy. Because the whole city was like a huge spirit-gathering formation, which gathered the spiritual chi of heaven and earth from all directions. It could be said that cultivating in the city was no different from cultivating in the blessed land, and the effect was even better. The reason why Lin Sun changed his appearance was that he didn't want to be disturbed. Now he was in the limelight. Once his identity was exposed, it was bound to attract a lot of unnecessary things and trouble. The courtyard was old and mottled. It was not large, but it was quiet and secluded. After Lin Sun set up the four-symbol king formation around the courtyard, he felt very relaxed. In this way, even if there was a foreign enemy, he could at least have a certain degree of defense. Big brother, I want to inquire about the ancient land of Wanxian. As soon as everything was settled, Alu said quickly. According to Chen Linkong of the burning immortal city, Alu's fortune was probably related to the ancient land of Wanxian. Do you want me to go with you? Lin Sun asked. No, I just want to inquire about the information. I can do it alone, Alu said. Alu left in a hurry on the same day. However, to his disappointment, not a single cultivator in the entire immortal incineration city had heard of the ancient myriad land. Finally, he decided to explore other areas of the 3,000 world with the help of the Tower of Summit to see if he could find any clues about the ancient land of Wanxian. Lin Sun planned to go with him, but Alu refused. According to him, this was his own way of cultivation, and he needed to explore it by himself. If he really needed help, he would take the initiative to ask. Lin Sun didn't insist. He just gave Alu some royal medicines and treasures, including a piece of thunder bamboo of innumerable tribulations. On this day, Alu left in a hurry. Lin Sun didn't worry about him. Alu's combat strength was extremely strong. Although he looked rough, he was not stupid. He knew how to judge the situation. On this day, Lin Sun began to meditate. This meditation was different from the previous ones. It was not to improve his combat strength, but to sort out his own way of cultivation and explore his future. It was difficult, but Lin Sun had set foot on the road to the top since he was in the Tao Insight realm. Over the years, he had accumulated abundant experience and knowledge. He knew what he wanted. In the following period of time, practitioners in the burning immortal city suddenly found that Demon Lin seemed to have evaporated from the world, and there was no more movement from him. Is he looking for opportunities in some place of fortune? Maybe he's in trouble. After all, too many top figures died in his hands in the Battle of Finshan Valley. That's right. I heard that forces like the Golden Crow have sent their forces to other realms to seek help through the Tower of Apex, to take revenge on Demon Lin. I also heard that the successor of the Xitigarbha Temple is also looking for Demon Lin, saying that Demon Lin is a heretic and wants to release him from purgatory. No wonder Demon God Lin disappeared without a trace. If I were in his shoes, I would definitely hide as well. There was a lot of discussion, but as time went by, the discussion about Lin Sun gradually decreased. There were millions of practitioners who entered the burning immortal realm this time. This was definitely a huge number. Among them, there was no lack of top talents and ancient freaks. Almost every day, there was a sensational event. Some people accidentally entered the land of fortune and obtained unexpected fortune, which caused a great uproar. There were also tragic killings in different places of the burning immortal realm. Some top figures died because of this, which made countless practitioners tremble. But there were also dazzling powerhouses who rose because of this and became the focus of the major forces. In the beginning, although Lin Sun's achievements were dazzling, when he fell into silence and there was no news about him, no one cared about him, and he was gradually forgotten. 3 months had passed unknowingly. The burning immortal realm was turbulent. Some people rose, some fell, some were happy, some were sad. But all of this had nothing to do with Lin Sun. In a quiet courtyard, Lin Sun meditated in a room and examined his own path. He sorted out and summarized the experiences, insights, and understandings of these years of cultivation. The older one grew, the more naive one would find oneself in the past. It was the same with cultivation. The higher one stood, the more one understood whether the path he had taken before was a winding and rugged road or a broad and bright one. What he thought was right in the past might not be right. What he thought was wrong in the past might have hidden mysteries that could be figured out. This path of cultivation was like walking in the mountains and rivers. In the past, the mountains were mountains and the water was water. Then, the mountains were not mountains and the water was not water. In the end, he would understand that the mountains were still the same mountains and the water was still the same water. However, at that time, his state of mind and the essence he had comprehended would be completely different from the past. Now Lin Sun was confirming the past path, comparing and referring to it as a guide to seek and explore his own path to the top of the Tao. In 3 months, he had comprehended a lot and benefited a lot. The details that he had not noticed in the past gave him new insights and feelings. Then he summarized and confirmed them, drew inferences about other cases from one instance, checked the deficiencies, and made up for the ultimate perfection. My Tao is different from the past and the present world. Only by seeking myself can I help myself. Others really can't give me advice. 3 months of meditation and understanding made Lin Sun's Taoist heart more pure and firm. Perhaps there were countless opportunities and fortunes in the absolute domain. But for him, if he wanted to walk on a path different from the world, the key was to rely on himself. The guidance of others and the Taoist scriptures he had mastered could only be used as a reference and reference. His own Tao must be walked and witnessed by himself. This was the Tao proving by oneself. Like the old toad, his Tao was also a Tao path with the burning immortal Chenlinkong. It was also a Tao path, and there was hope for him to set foot on the absolute king realm. But it was destined not to be suitable for Lin Sun. It was not good or bad, but the Tao path he sought was different. Another month passed. It's time to go out for a walk. On this day, Lin Sun opened his eyes from meditation and stood up. His figure was ethereal and ethereal. At this time, it was like the full moon in the blue sea. Even if he continued to meditate, it would be futile. The next thing to do was to seek and explore the way to condense the Tao seed of self and prepare for the absolute king realm. Chapter 1165. The immortal burning ancient city was getting more and more lively. Compared with Lin Sun's arrival 4 months ago, the number of practitioners in the city had increased by more than 10 times. Inheritors of Taoism, strong practitioners of clans, descendants of tribes. Even some rare creatures were not uncommon in the city. For example, the strong practitioners of the spirited conch tribe with colorful shells and the strong practitioners of the snow stork tribe with 9 tails. There were even the extremely rare descendants of the cloud weaver tribe, whose bodies were as soft as clouds. When they walked, they seemed to be drifting in the void. Once frightened, their cloud-like bodies would turn into wisps of smoke and flee away with a bang. They were very timid. In addition, there were many ancient freaks and peerless talents. Walking on the bustling street, Lin Sun seemed to return to the outside world in a trance. Everywhere he looked, there were all kinds of people. At this moment, he transformed into an ordinary-looking young man, like a passerby, strolling around in the attitude of a bystander. "Child, this is fiery dew. Do you need it?" A young girl came up to him, holding a ceramic jar in her white hand. Wisps of magnificent and colorful fiery clouds came out of it, which made the young girl's face blush and cute. How do I exchange for it? Lin Sun was a little surprised. Fiery dew is not easy to collect. It was born in the clouds and needed to be collected with great effort, just like drawing silk. Well, anything is fine as long as it is a spiritual material, the young girl said timidly. Obviously, she had never sold anything on the street before. Lin Sun thought for a while, took out a small white jade bottle, and handed it to the young girl. There are 3 mystical, light condensing pills in it. Is that okay? Yes. The young girl's eyes lit up with surprise. Lin Sun accepted the jar of fiery dew with a smile. When he was about to leave, the young girl in front of him turned into wisps of smoke with a bang. This startled Lin Sun. He thought it was an enemy attack. Unexpectedly, the smoke condensed into 2 hands, which cupped to Lin Sun and said, "Thank you, child. You are really a good man." Lin Sun was speechless. Then he realized that the young girl was a descendant of the Cloud Weaver tribe. "Child, my name is Kai Kai. If I collect more fiery dew in the future, can I trade with you?" Kai Kai was looking forward to it. Of course. Lin Sun smiled. Crash, the clouds transformed and condensed into a sky full of flower petals, fluttering unceasingly. Kai Kai's cheerful voice sounded out. "This is great. You are the first one who is willing to do business with me. Thank you. Thank you so much." The petals fluttered in the air, looking magnificent and illusory. Lin Sun knew that Kai Kai was expressing her gratitude in a special way. The girl's innocence and kindness, like a ray of sunshine, touched Lin Sun, who was used to killing and bloodshed. Finally, Kai Kai transformed into a cloud and happily disappeared from the bustling street. Lin guessed that she must have gone to the clouds to collect fiery dew again. Big news! Zhou Qingyun, the peerless monstrous genius of the Saint Hermit Land Star Fantasy Paradise, has stepped into the Apex Pavilion and is ranked 93rd. This is the 13th elite to make it into the top 100 in the past few months. The street was bustling with noise and excitement. Lin Sun walked out of the city while listening. Not long after, he accidentally learned of a piece of important news. In the past 4 months, there were practitioners who had become kings one after another. They were all top figures of the younger generation from different orthodoxies. They were the real new kings. However, in comparison, even more cultivators failed when advancing to king realm. Those who were lucky would become half-step kings. Those who were unlucky were directly possessed by the devil and died. However, although there was no lack of people who had become kings, so far no one had set foot on the peak of the king realm. Of course, this was only in the immortal burning realm. It was hard to say in other areas of the 3000 world. Have you heard that the Golden Crow branch is frantically looking for Demon Lin? It is said that a practitioner of the Golden Crow branch has become a king, and there is more than one. It's not just the Golden Crow lineage. The other orthodoxies are also searching for Demon God Lin. There are people keeping an eye on the vicinity of the Pavilion of the Summit and the Tower of the Summit. As long as Demon God Lin appears, he will definitely be discovered immediately. A storm is coming. However, there has been no news of Demon Lin for a whole 4 months. Do you think he has realized something is wrong and left the immortal burning realm with the help of the Apex Tower? It's very likely. Not long after, Lin Sun heard some discussions. He was silent for a while, shook his head, and left. Too many things had happened in the immortal burning realm in the past 4 months, but none of this could affect Lin Sun's mind. Not long after, he left the city and walked like a wild crane in the boundless world. The immortal burning realm was very large. It was covered with mountains and a fiery red sky. It was like a small world with many opportunities and places of fortune. From this day on, Lin Sun completely let go of himself and acted according to his heart. He strolled in the deep mountains and old forests, looking up at everything in the world. Sometimes he stood on a cliff and watched the clouds flicker and the divine light flow. He could watch for several days and nights, motionless like a rock. Sometimes he lay by the river at night, listening to the sound of flowing water and falling asleep accompanied by the starlight. Sometimes, when he was in a good mood, he drank until he was dead drunk and lay in the flowers. Sometimes, when he was depressed, he ran wildly in the mountains and fields like a hurricane, flying and venting wantonly. In the end, he had no more thoughts. He wandered, strolled, stared, drank, slept. Heaven and earth, all living beings, all things, none of them existed. The chaotic affairs of the world, the memories in his mind, the emotions in his heart, they seemed to have disappeared. He was muddle-headed and empty. He went there 7 days later. There was a rumor among the cultivators in the immortal burning realm that there was a guy who had gone crazy and was like a wild man shuttling through the mountains and forests. He became a joke. A month passed. Almost all the cultivators who were searching for opportunities and fortunes in different areas of the immortal burning realm had seen the traces of that madman. It was strange. The immortal burning realm wasn't a peaceful paradise. Conversely, for the sake of seizing fortune and fortune, bloody battles and conflicts occurred practically every single day in different areas. But such a madman had practically walked through every single area of the immortal burning realm, yet he was able to survive until now. It was very difficult to believe indeed, and it was like a miracle. Who was he? No one knew. On this day, a strange flowering tree grew on a precipitous cliff. The tree was only 1 m tall, thick like the mouth of a bull, and its bark was like the scales of a dragon. A fiery red flower bud was in full bloom on its branch. It seemed as if it was formed from fiery copper liquid, and it was suffused with a metallic sheen. It was dusk, and the sunset glow on the horizon was like fire. A group of cultivators had gathered before the cliff since a long time ago, and their gazes were staring fixedly at the strange flowering tree. On its branch, the flower bud was gradually blooming. Every single petal that bloomed emanated a ray of flaming light that shot into the sky, and it was accompanied by balls of fiery red rain of light and a refreshing fragrance that refreshed the heart. It was a shocking scene. However, not a single one of these cultivators dared to approach it. Firstly, it was because the flower bud hadn't bloomed completely. Secondly, there was a bright golden spirit serpent coiled around the roots of this flowering tree. Its body was only thick like a chopstick, and it was covered in fine, fiery scales. Moreover, its head was faintly bulging, and it seemed to be on the verge of forming horns. Its aura was ferocious and gloomy, and it seemed to be tiny, yet it was like an overlord of a mountain. It didn't move as well, and it was waiting silently. Ah, how fragrant! Suddenly, a clear and melodious cry resounded from the fiery red layer of clouds above them. In an instant, the pupils of many cultivators constricted, and even the bright golden spirit serpent's body had suddenly arched, and it seemed as if it was accumulating strength and was about to attack. However, when they saw the figure in the layer of clouds clearly, no matter if it was those cultivators or the spirit serpent, all of them relaxed and didn't take any further action. There was a delicate and pretty young woman in the layer of clouds. She held a jar in her hand, and she was gathering strands of spirit liquid from within the fiery glow. It was precisely the young woman from the Cloud Weaver clan, Kai Kai. However, when she saw the scene on the cliff, she instantly realized that something was off, and she intended to leave. "Stop right there. Young miss, come over here." A cultivator shouted loudly. This was a young man in a dark robe with a narrow and long face. "What are you doing?" Kai Kai was extremely nervous, and cold sweat had seeped out from her jade, white forehead. "So long as you're obedient and help us do something, then we'll let you leave." As he spoke, the dark-robed young man pointed at the flowering tree in the distance and said, "Hey, see that flower? Go pluck it." He obviously intended to send Kai to her death. It was obvious that if she approached it, then not to mention plucking the flower, she would suffer the attack of that spirit serpent at the first possible moment. However, this was precisely what the dark-robed young man wanted to see. So long as the spirit serpent was drawn over, then they would be able to seize the opportunity to enter and seize that extremely miraculous copper flower. The other cultivators watched coldly from the sidelines and didn't stop them. Kai was even more nervous, and her pretty face was ghastly pale. She had a kind nature, and she'd never entered into conflict with anyone since she entered the Absolute Summit region. She'd always been gathering fiery, glow spirit liquid in the layer of clouds, so she'd never experienced such a battle. Quickly, the dark-robed young man shouted coldly, "Otherwise, I'll kill you right now." This was extremely shameless, forcing a young woman to her death, and his methods were extremely despicable and despicable. But no one said anything. For the sake of seizing fortune and fortune, no matter who it was, most cultivators would become ruthless and stop at nothing. Kai was terrified to the point tears almost flowed out from her eyes, and her entire body trembled. She'd utterly never imagined that merely a single sentence of hers would cause such a monstrous calamity. I'll give all of the fiery, glow spirit liquid I gathered to all of you. Can you let me off? She spoke with a sobbing tone, and she was extremely aggrieved and helpless as she trembled as she held out the clay jar in her hand. This was her painstaking effort. Tui, what's the fiery, glow spirit liquid? Who wants it? The dark-robed young man's face sank as he said, "Young miss, I'll give you one last chance. Quickly do it." Kai was terrified to the point her entire body trembled, and the clay jar in her hand fell to the ground. The mouth of the jar tilted, and the fiery glow spirit liquid within it was about to spill out. This was her painstaking effort, and she'd worked hard for half a month to gather so much. At this moment, she almost collapsed. Right at this moment, a large hand appeared out of thin air, and it firmly supported the clay jar. Chapter 1166. The crockery that was falling at a slanted angle was firmly stopped. Kai's eyes opened wide in disbelief. Her gaze moved from the hand to an arm that was covered in dust and dirt, and then she looked up again to see the person before her clearly. His hair was disheveled, his beard was unkempt, his clothes were ragged, and his entire body was dirty. Only his eyes were bright and clear. However, his eyes seemed to be too clear and clean, and they seemed to be devoid of any emotions and revealed an empty feeling. Kai was stunned. She felt that this dirty person before her was slightly familiar, yet she didn't know where she'd seen him before. It's that madman. All the cultivators on the distant cliff recognized this person, and someone teased. Recently, news about this lunatic had become a joke in the realm of the burning immortals. He was like a savage that had lost his mind, and he walked through different areas of the immortal world in a muddle-headed and mad manner. Traces of him could be seen amidst the boundless mountains and rivers. His figure could be seen amidst the battles for fortune and blood. But it just so happened that he was like a passerby that walked on his own, and no one knew what he was doing. They didn't know why he'd gone mad to such an extent. Most inconceivable of it all was that no matter what sort of danger he encountered, he was always able to survive unscathed, and it could be said to be a miracle. "Madman, come over here and help us pluck that flower." The black-robed young man spoke coldly. The figure that they took to be a madman turned around while his gaze was filled with wonder. "Don't go." Kai's heart constricted, and she suddenly grabbed the madman's arm and said, "They're asking you to give your life away. Look, there's a spirit snake coiled around the roots of that flower tree, and it'll take your life." The madman lowered his head and looked over. Hiss! When he noticed it, the golden and bright spirit snake seemed to feel extremely nervous, and it suddenly tensed its body while flicking its tongue and emanating hissing sounds as if it was threatening him. "Little girl, you really don't know what's good for you." The black-robed young man's face sank, and he suddenly attacked. A dazzling and blazing bolt of lightning slashed out from afar, and it tore through space. "Flee! Quickly!" Kai screamed and pulled Madman's arm to escape. However, she noticed that the arm was as heavy as a mountain, and it didn't move in the slightest. She was unable to move it at all. Boom! The thunderbolt arrived, but the madman casually raised his hand and grabbed. The blazing thunderbolt was like a piece of paper, shattering in the void like fireworks. Kai was stunned. Could this be a peerless expert? The pupils of the black-robed young man and the others in the distance constricted in unison. According to the rumors, even though this madman was crazy, it seemed like he had some ability since he was able to survive until now unscathed. The atmosphere was somewhat depressing. The black-robed youth's expression was somewhat ugly. His attack had been casually dissolved by such a madman. This caused him to lose face. But before he could make another move, he saw the madman's figure flash and arrive at the top of the cliff. He directly arrived before the flowering tree and stretched out his hand to grab it. It was also at this moment that the last petal on the flower bud that seemed to be made of molten fire copper bloomed. Within the flower, a strand of dazzling and resplendent fiery red divine ray of light poured down like a rain of light, and a faint fragrance drifted through the heavens and the earth. Swoosh! But at the same time, the golden spirit snake that coiled around the roots of the flowering tree attacked as well. It was like a golden bolt of lightning that bit the madman's wrist. Shit! Kai was shocked to the point her beautiful face turned pale, and she couldn't bear to watch. Attack! At the same time, the black-robed young man and the others attacked ferociously. They'd been accumulating strength for a long time, and they were just waiting for this moment. Bang! Boundless radiance of treasures and Tao arts erupted in the sky. They were dazzling and resplendent, and they poured down like tidewater and locked onto the madman who had his back towards them. However, a horrifying scene occurred. Any attack that hadn't even approached him seemed as if it had fallen into an abyss, and it was swallowed and obliterated before vanishing without a trace. Any treasure was instantly suppressed, and it wailed as it fell to the ground while its glow dimmed down. Everyone was astounded, and they were terrified to the point their scalps almost exploded. How could this be possible? On the other hand, the madman seemed to be completely unaware. He even paid no attention to the golden spirit snake that bit his wrist, and he plucked the strange flower that was suffused with a metallic sheen. His figure flashed as he returned to Kai's side and passed the flower over. Phew! His lips opened and closed, and his voice was hoarse. He seemed as if he hadn't spoken for a very long time, to the point he'd forgotten how to express himself. Kai was dumbstruck, and her mind went blank. The scenes she'd witnessed earlier were too inconceivable, and it caused her body and mind to suffer a blow, causing her to fall into a daze. "Are you afraid?" As the madman spoke, he pinched the golden snake that bit his wrist, and with a flick of his finger, the golden snake was blasted flying with a swish and fell into the boundless sea of clouds in the distance. When they looked at his wrist, it was completely unharmed, and there wasn't even a bite mark left behind. Hiss! The black-robed young man and the others felt coldness surge from their spines to their entire bodies, and the hairs on their bodies stood on end as they were completely terrified. That golden snake wasn't a kind existence, and its aura was extremely terrifying. If it wasn't for them being afraid of the golden snake earlier, how could they have waited until now? But at this moment, the golden snake was blasted flying with a flick of the madman's finger. It didn't even have the strength to struggle. His casual attitude caused the black-robed young man and the others to almost not dare believe their eyes. "I'm not afraid." Kai had sobered up at this moment. "Take it." The madman didn't say anything and handed the strange flower to her. "Friend, we're the successors of the great Freedom Sword sect, and we have our eyes on this king herb. Aren't you going too far by doing this?" In the distance, the black-robed young man was anxious and couldn't care less about anything else as he threatened. The madman's eyes were extremely clear, but they seemed extremely empty, as if he didn't even have any emotions. Hearing this, he tried hard to think for a while, but he couldn't remember anything. He couldn't help but shake his head. Then he left with Kai. The young girl in front of him gave him a trace of familiarity, and he subconsciously had an instinct to protect her. "Stay here." With a roar, a heavenly spirit sword shot out and slashed at the madman. The madman didn't even turn his head and waved his sleeve. Clang! This spirit sword left as quickly as it came. It suddenly turned in midair and returned with an even sharper and more ferocious momentum than the previous one. Poof! A cultivator's chest was pierced, and a string of scarlet blood sprayed out. And what killed him was his spirit sword. "Let's go." The expressions of the black-robed young man and the others changed completely as they realized how terrifying the madman was. They didn't dare hesitate any longer and turn around to flee. At the bank of a stream in the gorge, Kai Kai curiously sized up the madman in front of her. He stared blankly at the stream without moving, and he seemed to be in a daze and muddle-headed. "Can I help you wash up?" After a long time, Kai Kai couldn't help but ask. The madman was completely unaware and seemed as if he hadn't heard it. "Then I'll take it, as you've acquiesced." Kai Kai took a deep breath and seemed to have mustered up great courage. She took out a handkerchief and soaked it in the river before helping the madman wipe off the dust and dirt on his face. She was very careful, and her movements were very gentle, as if she was afraid of angering the madman. As time passed, the madman stared at the river motionlessly like a clay statue. Kai Kai gradually calmed down and focused on the movements in her hands. The madman in front of her hadn't bathed for countless days. His entire body was dirty, and his skin was covered in dirt and dust. If it was any other girl, she would have felt disgust a long time ago. But Kai Kai was very concentrated. Her face was pure and beautiful. Her eyes were large and bright, and her skin was delicate and delicate. She emanated a tender and innocent aura. Time passed. The madman remained silent, as if he was possessed. Kai Kai had wiped his face, neck, and arms clean a long time ago. After thinking for a moment, she took out an exquisite knife and was about to help the madman shave off his disheveled beard and hair. Right at this moment, the madman suddenly flicked out a hand and swiped it lightly in the stream. A vortex floated up into appearance, and it was like a black hole that swallowed the surrounding river water. After that, the vortex suddenly grew taller and charged into the sky, and it emanated rumbling sounds as the entire stream was swept into it. The entire gorge started to tremble, and space fell into disorder. On the other hand, the vortex was like a revolving abyss that seemed to be on the verge of swallowing the sky. Rumble. The plants and rocks in the gorge collapsed into pieces, while the airflow in the gorge became chaotic and violent. The nearby mountains shook violently, as if they were on the verge of collapse. The madman stood up. His clothes fluttered while his messy beard and hair fluttered. His entire body emanated an imposing aura that shot into the sky, and he was like a god that had awakened at this moment. He stretched out his hand and guided, causing two different types of energy to suddenly appear within the vortex that was like an abyss. One was blazing flames, and the other was a rapid flow of water. Water and fire couldn't coexist, yet at this moment, they coexisted within the vortex. The two types of energy chased after each other as they revolved, and they faintly formed a miraculous balance. Roar. After that, a dragon roar resounded. It was like a true dragon was hibernating in the depths of the vortex, and it caused the might of the entire vortex to become different. At this moment, the nearby space was collapsing inch by inch. The clouds in the sky were blasted apart while the mountains in the surroundings rumbled and collapsed. It was a scene of great destruction where everything in the world was collapsing. Kai Kai was dumbstruck since a long time ago. She squatted on the ground and shivered as she watched all of this with disbelief. In her daze, the madman before her was like an overlord that possessed the imposing aura to swallow the world, looked down upon the world, and revealed the might of supremacy in the entire world. Bang! The madman flicked his sleeve, causing the vortex to charge 30 kilometers into the sky, yet it seemed eternal and grew without end. It was the might of the undying Grand Tao. "This is my Tao." Suddenly, the madman muttered with a flat voice that was neither happy nor sorrowful, and it only carried a feeling of relief, clarity, and open-mindedness. When Kai Kai raised her head to look once more, she saw the madman's entire body was flowing with a brilliant green glow of the Tao, and it washed away the dirt on his body, causing his skin to be sparkling and translucent. With a casual wave of his hand, his beard that was like weeds rustled and vanished. His long hair had become clear and glowing at this moment, and every single strand of it was crystalline. After that, it was casually tied behind his head. When he turned around, Kai Kai saw a sharp and handsome face. His black eyes were clear and bright, and his entire body emanated an otherworldly aura. Bang! At the same time, The vortex behind him that seemed like an abyss that could swallow the sky suddenly dispersed in the heavens and the earth, and it transformed into a multicolored rain of light that illuminated this expanse of the world. It caused his tall and handsome figure to carry an ethereal and mysterious aura. He was like an immortal. Chapter 1167. Lin Sun stood in silence. In his mind, everything he had experienced in the past month gushed out like a tide, and everything down to the slightest detail appeared. Then, it turned into a kind of enlightenment and settled in his heart. He had found a way of cultivation that belonged to him. Kai was stunned. Before, Lin Sun was covered with dirt and his hair was untidy. His face couldn't be seen clearly, and he looked extremely sloppy. But at this moment, he seemed as if he'd been reborn. His entire body was untainted by even a speck of dust, and he was bright and radiant like an otherworldly immortal. Kai almost couldn't believe her eyes. "What are you doing with the knife?" Lin Sun asked with a smile. He had completely recovered his mind and woke up from the state of emptiness. Kai let out a sound, her pretty face blushing. Embarrassed, she said, I was just going to help you trim your beard and hair. Please don't misunderstand." She quickly put away the knife in her hand. Then, Kai suddenly remembered something. She took out the strange flower and said, "Young master, this is yours." This was an extremely extraordinary king medicine, far better than ordinary ones. But Kai didn't seem to care about it at all. She just thought that it was not hers, so she had to return it. Lin Sun was stunned at first, and then laughed. "This king medicine is sold to you," Kai said with a bitter face, "but I have no money to buy it. Fiery spiritual liquid is okay. You said last time that you would make a deal with me after collecting fiery spiritual liquid." Lin Sun's eyes were gentle, and he thought of Xia Xiaochong. But compared with Kai, Xia Xiaochong was a heartless fool. "You are that child." Kai was surprised. Lin Sun nodded with a smile. Finally, under Lin Sun's insistence, Kai put away the king medicine, and Lin Sun took out a large pot of fiery spiritual liquid. This treasure was not so precious for other practitioners, but for Lin Sun, the kindness contained in it was far greater than anything else. "Let's go. I will take you back to the city," Lin Sun said. Kai agreed readily. They immediately set off. On the way, Lin Sun couldn't help asking, "Why do you come alone in the dangerous zone of forsaken dreams?" Kai answered matter-of-factly, "For the sake of cultivation, this is the only way." Her voice was crisp, but it made Lin sigh with emotion. "Yes, for cultivation. Who said that weaklings couldn't come here to dig for fortuitous encounters? Who said that an innocent and unaffected cultivator like Kai couldn't rise up in the apex domain? Young master, you see, although I encountered some danger earlier, I had your help. Furthermore, you even gave me a royal medicine. That of my good fortune. If I were in the outside world, how could I possibly have such good fortune?" Kai said seriously. Lin Sun nodded, realizing that although the girl in front of him was simple and naive, her mind was also very clear and intelligent. Suddenly, the sound of something tearing through the air resounded in the distance. Streaks of light flew over like divine rainbows, and there were at least a dozen of them. The leader was a golden-robed man with a crown on his head. He was extremely valiant and emitted a terrifying aura. "Senior Brother Yin, it's that girl," someone beside the golden-robed man shouted excitedly. In an uproar, these people rushed over and sealed off the nearby void. The person who shouted excitedly was the black-robed young man who claimed to be the successor of the Great Freedom Sword sect on the side of the cliff. He looked excited and said, "I saw with my own eyes that the madman gave the fire copper king flower to this girl." Senior Brother Yin glanced at Kai and then fixed his eyes on Lin Sun. He asked calmly, "Who is this person?" The black-robed young man was stunned at first, and then shook his head. "I don't know." There was no other way. The contrast between the previous Lin Sun and the current Lin Sun was so great that the black-robed young man couldn't recognize him for a while. But even if he didn't know him, someone else did. At this moment, when they saw Lin Sun's face, a practitioner suddenly shouted, "He is Demon Lin." His words resounded in this world like a clap of thunder. Everyone, including senior brother Yin and the black-robed young man, suddenly changed their expressions and showed a shocked expression. Demon Lin? Hadn't he disappeared from the world of burning immortals for almost half a year? Why did he appear again? It's indeed him. Soon, people confirmed one after another. All of them looked solemn and looked at Lin Sun with incomparable fear. Although Lin Sun had been silent for a period of time, his bloody achievements in the Finshan Valley were still spread in the world of burning immortals. But what was the relationship between Demon Lin and that girl? Not to mention them. Even Kai was dumbfounded. She had never thought that the young man with a warm smile next to her was the world-famous Demon Lin. For a moment, she felt like she was dreaming. The scene was a little quiet for a while. Even senior brother Yin, who was the leader, felt it was a little tricky. He was caught unprepared and didn't know whether to advance or retreat. It was very embarrassing, and in his heart, he couldn't wait to curse the black-robed young man to death. This girl was related to Demon Lin, so what the hell was the point of revenge? It was no different from courting death. What's the matter, everyone? Lin Sun opened his mouth and glanced at the crowd with his black eyes indifferently. All the practitioners who were swept by his eyes were stiff and didn't dare to look at him directly. Senior brother Yin, who was full of cold sweat, coughed and said, "It's nothing. I've admired Brother Lin for a long time and haven't had the chance to meet you. Now that I've met you, I'm so excited that I came to disturb you. Please forgive me." Other practitioners secretly admired senior brother Yin in their hearts. He was a man who could rise and fall at the same time. He changed the topic and found a way out for himself. He had a good sense of propriety. Lin Sun said, "Now that we've met, can you get out of the way?" Senior brother Yin stepped aside and made a gesture of invitation with a smile. "Then I won't disturb you anymore. See you off, Brother Lin." The other cultivators gasped. Senior brother Yin has such a sense of propriety. As expected of a senior brother, he's truly outstanding. Of course, there were also people who secretly cursed. Previously, senior brother Yin had solemnly vowed that whoever dared to go against the Great Freedom Sword Sect would pay 10 times the price. But now he was so cowardly. It was not until Lin Sun and Kai left together that senior brother Yin wiped off his cold sweat. He felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders as he said, Fortunately, we didn't offend this ruthless, cold, merciless, and unbridled fellow. Otherwise, I'm afraid none of us would be able to leave." The black-robed young man hesitated. "But senior brother, aren't we a little too weak?" Senior brother Yin said coldly, "Do you know why our sect is called Great Freedom? That is, we should lower our heads when we should. Only in this way can we achieve great freedom. If we stubbornly persist, we will only face great destruction, let alone great freedom." These words, which were obviously immoral, were said with awe-inspiring righteousness, sonorous and persuasive by him. If the founder of the Great Freedom Sword Sect knew that senior brother Yin understood the 3 words great freedom, in this way, he would be so angry that he would jump out of his coffin. Others praised him. Senior brother Yan's words make sense. But then again, since Demon Lin has shown up, there will be a show to watch. As far as I know, there are many forces waiting for him in the immortal burning ancient city. Senior brother Yin seemed to be deep in thought and changed the topic without a trace. Yes, the immortal burning realm is not the world of the reincarnation developing realm, but the world of the kings. No matter how strong Demon Lin is, he is doomed to suffer. Someone said excitedly with bright eyes, "In the absolute domain, there is no saint. If he is in the outside world, Demon Lin can still use the holy treasure to deal with the king realm. But now, it is destined to be impossible. Does this mean that as long as he shows up in front of the immortal burning ancient city, he will be targeted and attacked by the king realm experts? That must be it." Senior brother Yin said with certainty, "Of course, don't think that I am cursing Demon Lin. I am just analyzing a fact." His words were watertight. Even if Lin Sun heard it, he would not be able to criticize him. When he spoke up to hear, he pondered deeply for a moment and said, "Of course, if Devil God Lin is able to enter the city safely, then it would be sufficient for him to avoid this calamity. Because King Realm experts are restrained by the immortal incineration city, so they're unable to enter the city. This may be Demon Lin's only chance of survival. The black-robed youth said, I feel that he no longer has a chance. During this period of time, the city gates have been under tight control. There are King Realm experts presiding over it. Once Fiend Celestial Lin appears, he will definitely be killed outside the city. Senior Brother Yin, let's hurry back to the city. This is destined to be a great battle. If we don't see it with our own eyes, we will definitely regret it for the rest of our lives. Someone could not wait any longer. Let's go. Senior Brother Yin was also very tempted. He waved his hand and immediately decided to return to the immortal burning city. In the distance, the magnificent outline of the immortal burning ancient city could already be seen. However, when Lin Sun was about to move forward, he suddenly sensed that there was a powerful aura belonging to the King Realm experts near the city gate. And there was more than one. Kai, what happened recently? Lin Sun stopped and asked casually. Kai was stunned and said, something sensational happens every day. Child, what do you mean? Do you know why there are so many King Realm experts in front of the city gate? Lin Sun asked. Kai suddenly showed a disgusted expression and said angrily, Child, you don't know that those King Realm experts are the descendants of the big orthodoxies. They have been in control of the city gate for more than a month. Only the descendants of the big forces can enter and leave freely. Descendants of small forces like me, or cultivators without any sect, have to pay a sum of money to enter the city. It's too much. Every time I enter the city, half of the fiery, glow spiritual liquid I collected will be taken away by them. Some cultivators are even worse. Their treasures will be bought by them before they can warm up their hands. Bought? Lin Sun was stunned. Kai said disdainfully, of course they won't rob openly. After all, it will damage the reputation of their sections. But they will force other cultivators to sell their treasures to them at the lowest price. Lin Sun understood and couldn't help sneering. They are really overbearing and shameless. As he said, he shook his body and turned into an ordinary-looking young man. Then he said to Kai, I have to trouble you for the time being. With a wave of his sleeve, he took Kai into the wordless pagoda. As long as the power of the holy treasure was not activated, it would not violate the rules of the absolute summit domain, and the wordless pagoda would not be destroyed. After doing all this, Lin Sun rushed to the immortal burning ancient city in the distance. Chapter 1168. It was different from entering and exiting immortal incineration city in the past. There were cultivators from various sects guarding the city gates, and only cultivators from the sects could enter and leave freely. On the other hand, other cultivators could only line up before the city gates, and they had to pay a fee to enter the city. This was the rule. This rule was jointly set by many great powers, and anyone who dared to go against it would be going against these great powers. This caused many ordinary cultivators to feel extremely aggrieved. But it couldn't be helped. They had no choice but to leave the city for the sake of searching and obtaining fortuitous encounters. They could only pinch their noses and endure such an overbearing rule. Line up! Hurry up! A bearded man shouted before the city gates. He was a half-step King Realm cultivator, and he was obviously very old. He was from the Myriad Beast Spirit Mountain, and his name was Lu Hong. People like him naturally didn't enter the Apex region to take a step further on the path of cultivation, and he could only play the role of helping the sect plunder cultivation resources. A gray-robed man sat lazily on the city wall above the city gates. He looked very young, but he emanated a terrifying King Realm aura. This was a new king. His name was Wei Yuanjin, and he was a peerless expert from the Golden Crow clan. 3 months ago, he was forced to advance because he couldn't control his cultivation. Never had he imagined that he would be able to smoothly step foot into the life and death realm and become a young King Realm cultivator. Not too far away from Wei Yuanjin, a green-clothed woman's gaze swept through the crowd below like a sharp blade. Anyone who was swept by her gaze would stiffen and feel extremely suffocated. The green-clothed woman was also a King Realm cultivator, and her name was Miao Xin. She was from the Xuandu Taoism school, and she was the junior sister of Fairy Miao Hua who had died at Lin Sun's hands. But now, Miao Tsun was a true king, and her status was different from before. Besides Wu Yuanjin and Miao Tsun, there was a man on each side of the city wall. On the left was a tall young man in a yellow robe who was resting against the wall with a sword in his arms. He had a cold and indifferent expression. His name was Shang Chong, and he was from the Ocean Soul clan. On the right was a tall and sturdy man who was wiping his saber with a cold expression. His name was Wang Yuntong, and he came from the moon-worshipping cult of the Saint Hermit. He was also a peerless figure, and he was the senior brother of Lai Yanhai, who had died in the hands of Lin Sun. Whether it was Shang Chong of the Sea Soul race or Wang Yuntong of the moon-worshipping sect, they had both advanced to become kings. 4 young kings controlled the entire entrance to the city, and such a deterring force caused all the cultivators that were lining up to tremble with fear. Not to mention disobeying, they didn't even dare to think of resisting. Lin Sun was also in the queue. He noticed Wu Yuanjin, Miao Tsun, Shang Chong, and Wang Yuntong when he was in the queue. On top of the city gate, there was a wanted poster. Lin Sun recognized at a glance that the figure outlined on the wanted map was himself. This wanted poster had obviously been there for a long time, and the reward was 3 king herbs. Lin Sun glanced at him and then withdrew his eyes. An uncontrollable killing intent surged in his heart. Obviously, those great powers that he'd dealt with in the past were unable to restrain themselves and were madly searching for his whereabouts. On the other hand, the reason they dared to act so fearlessly was none other than because they possessed a king realm expert to rely on. Let's enter the city first. Lin Sun took a deep breath and restrained the killing intent in his heart. The immortal burning ancient city was covered with a natural restrictive power which could suppress king realm experts and prevent them from entering the city. Otherwise, how could young kings that came from great powers like Wu Yuanjin, Miao Tsun, Wang Yuntong, and Shang Chong possibly lower themselves to be stationed here? Take out your storage treasure. Soon, it was Lin Sun's turn. Lu Hong, the bearded man, said impatiently, "Remember, if you dare to hide anything, this will be your burial place." As he spoke, he took out a bronze mirror and began to scan it up and down in front of Lin Sun. This was an extraordinary treasure that could make all the treasures of a cultivator have nowhere to hide. Of course, some treasures that went against the natural order, such as Lin Sun's wordless pagoda and the gate to heaven in his sea of consciousness, naturally couldn't be detected. Lu Hong quickly put away the bronze mirror. At the same time, Lin Sun also took out the storage ring he had prepared beforehand. Lu Hong examined it and found that there were only some common spiritual materials that couldn't be seen. He couldn't help cursing, "Damn it, another poor bastard. Get out of here." Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and glanced at Lu Hong. He had already sentenced Lu Hong to death in his heart. However, this was not the time to care about it. He calmed himself down and walked straight into the city gate. But at this moment, a sudden roar sounded. Wait. Along with the voice, a figure appeared in front of Lin Sun with a whoosh. It was a black-robed young man with scarlet eyes and a bloody aura all over his body. As if he had found his prey, he was extremely excited and screamed hoarsely, "Demon Lin! Quick! That guy is Demon Lin!" Originally, the young man's roar had shocked everyone nearby and made their hearts tremble. Even the 4 kings in different positions were alarmed and looked over. But when they heard the excited roar of the black-robed young man, the atmosphere changed accordingly. Black Demon Tengu bastard. At the same time, Lin Sun finally guessed the identity of the black-robed young man. His heart was filled with hatred. How could Lin Sun bear it when he was about to enter the city? Almost before the young man's roar died away, Lin Sun had already attacked. Boom! The black-robed young man was still excited and complacent. He didn't expect that his neck would be grabbed and then broken with a crack. He died on the spot. But Lin Sun didn't stop at all. He rushed to the city gate and exerted all his strength with ice dragon steps. Want to leave? Impossible. It had to be said that the reaction of a King Realm practitioner was too terrifying. At the same time as Lin Sun made his move, a figure had already fallen from the sky. It was Wu Yuanjin of the Golden Crow branch. He emitted a dazzling golden light and rushed over at an incredible speed, as if he was teleporting. And at the same time, he had already stretched out his arm and grabbed at Lin Sun from a distance. Boom! A big golden hand was condensed, wrapped in the dazzling power of King Realm, which made the air near the city gate explode. It was a horrible scene. Some practitioners were nearby, but he didn't care at all. Before the hand fell, several innocent practitioners couldn't escape in time. Their bodies burst into pieces, and blood rained everywhere. Bang! Lin Sun didn't look back. He exerted all his strength to exert the negative smash, and a phantom of the negative smash emerged. However, it couldn't resist at all. It was smashed by the big golden hand, and the momentum didn't decrease. It hit Lin Sun's back fiercely. Seeing that he was about to be caught by the big hand, he suddenly rushed forward with bright Taoist light all over his body. His speed suddenly soared a lot, and he narrowly avoided it. Boom! When the big golden hand fell, the ground shook, cracked, and smoke and dust filled the air. At this time, Lin Sun was less than 30 meters away from the city gate. Usually, this distance would be crossed in an instant. But at this time, the 30 meters distance was like the line of life and death in front of the gate of hell, full of great killing intent. Whoosh! A dazzling black sword chi swept up and stabbed straight at Lin Sun, who was rushing over. This was Miao Tsin of Xuandu Taoism, and she attacked before Wu Yuanjin. When Lin Sun avoided Wu Yuanjin's palm, she had already attacked. The sword chi was peerlessly fierce, and it fully displayed the terrifying power of a King Realm practitioner. Unless he retreated, there was no way to resist it at all. Almost at the same time, Shang Chung of the Sea Soul clan and Wang Yuntong of the Moon-worshipping sect had rushed over and surrounded Lin Sun from the rear. This series of actions was completed in almost an instant. At this moment, the four young King Realm experts revealed extremely shrewd combat experience, and they firmly locked down the entrance to the city. As for the other cultivators in the surroundings, because the unexpected event had occurred too quickly, most of them hadn't even been able to react to it. The situation was extremely dangerous. This was a situation of certain death. Any one of the four King Realm practitioners was capable of suppressing all the practitioners below the King Realm, and even the top talents were unable to compete with them, because the King Realm had long stood above the five realms. If it was in the outside world, Lin Sun could use the Wordless Pagoda, the Great Way Boundless Bottle, or even the Vast Universe Arc to escape. But this was the Apex region, and there were no divine rules and restrictions here. Using the holy treasures would only make Lin Sun die faster. Tom seemed to slow down. The four powerhouses all had cold and indifferent expressions. They were confident of victory. The reason why they were stationed here was to wait for such an opportunity. Now that the opportunity had come, they naturally wouldn't watch Lin Sun slip away. Moreover, they were very conceited. As King Realm practitioners, they had become different from the past. In the past, they might be extremely afraid of Lin Sun. But now, Lin Sun was just a little bug in their eyes, and they could pinch him to death at will. At this critical moment when his life was hanging by a thread, Lin Sun made a decision that exceeded everyone's expectations. His figure did not retreat. Instead, he moved at an even faster speed to meet the black sword energy that was coming at him. Puff! The sword chi passed through his chest, and a string of dark red blood sprayed out. On the other hand, Lin Sun had already charged forward explosively. Miao Tsin, who was blocking in front of him, was caught off guard. However, her reaction wasn't slow at all, and she subconsciously slashed out with her sword. But before she could make a move, she felt a sharp pain in her spirit, as if she was slashed by a sharp blade, and she felt dizzy. Right at this moment, Lin Sun seized the opportunity and charged into the city gate at a speed that was almost desperate. Rumble! In front of the city gate, the attacks of the four King Realm practitioners descended. Blazing smoke and divine radiance surged, and a terrifying aftershock spread out like a landslide and a tsunami. It was an extremely shocking scene. It could be foreseen that if Lin Sun was slightly slower, he would absolutely be blasted to death on the spot. Everything had happened too quickly. It was a race against time, and life and death were decided in a split second. If it was any other peak figure in such a hopeless situation, there were probably very few that could resolve a calamity like Lin Sun. Even Lin Sun was covered in cold sweat at this moment. Chapter 1169. Inside the city gate, it was bustling with noise and excitement. But when the attack of the four king realm powerhouses broke out outside the city gate, it produced a terrible shock, as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. All the cultivators inside the city were frightened and trembled all over. The originally lively and clamorous atmosphere had also vanished without a trace. All eyes were on the city gate. There stood a figure with his chest torn open and blood spilling out like a waterfall. He was like a fierce beast that had just escaped. The aura he exuded made everyone's heart palpitate. This man was Lin Sun. At this moment, his cheeks were pale and his body was soaked in blood and cold sweat. His chest was pierced by the sword chi of a king realm powerhouse, which caused him great injury. The sword chi was so terrible and full of the power of a king realm powerhouse. Even though Lin Sun had avoided the vital parts, he was still seriously injured. Are you trying to bully me because I haven't killed enough? At this moment, Lin Sun's black eyes became extremely cold. The sharp pain in his body couldn't replace the burning anger in his heart. Hatred. Unforgettable hatred. The crisis of life and death just now completely infuriated Lin Sun. Four king realm powerhouses attacked together just to deal with him. Did they really think that he was easy to bully? Lin Sun clenched his fists quietly, and the veins on the back of his hand stood out. Or did they really think that with the help of the king realm powerhouses, they could regard him as a fish on the chopping board that could be slaughtered at will? Outside the city gate, smoke and dust filled the air. The four kings' faces were gloomy, and their eyes were cold as they stared at Lin Sun inside the city gate. The other cultivators were all dumbfounded. No one had expected that Lin Sun could escape from such a desperate situation. They were four king realm powerhouses who had just advanced to the king realm. If they attacked together, they could easily kill any top talent. But now, Fiend Celestial Lin had managed to escape. It was so incredible and unbelievable. He actually escaped. How shameful! Wu Yuanjin murmured with a livid face. He was eager to rush into the city, but he restrained himself in the end. There was a natural restriction in the immortal burning ancient city that suppressed king realm powerhouses. If they dared to break in, they would suffer the backlash of the restriction. I can only say that this kid is too cunning. If that friend from the Black Sea Tengu clan hadn't seen through his identity, how could he have possibly seized the opportunity to enter the city? Shang Chong of the Sea Soul clan had his green hair fluttering in the wind, and his expression was equally gloomy. He's already been heavily injured by my sword chi. Even if he escapes into the city, he won't be able to escape death. The Xuandu Daoist School's Miao Tsin gritted her teeth while a cold glow shot out from her eyes, and she seemed to be on the verge of swallowing someone up. Originally, she was the most promising one to kill Lin, but she didn't expect that Lin was not only cruel to his enemies, but also to himself. He didn't dodge at all and fought for a chance of survival at the risk of being seriously injured. Until now, she still didn't figure out whether the blow on her spirit was from Lin Sun or someone else. Otherwise, she was absolutely sure that she could kill Lin Sun even if he risked his life. Upon hearing her words, Wang Yuntong, the successor of the moon-worshipping cult, let out a long howl. Everyone, Demon Lin has shown up and was seriously injured by us. He's on the verge of death. Now he's inside the city gate, and it's the best time to kill him. Why don't you act? The howl was like a thunderclap, shaking the world, and even spreading to the sky above the immortal burning ancient city. For a moment, countless experts from various orthodoxies in the city stopped what they were doing and rushed out. Upon being reminded, Wu Yuanjin, Miao Tsin, Shang Chong, and the others also shouted, telling their sects to take this opportunity to encircle and kill Lin Sun. A demon Lin at his peak might be enough to make any cultivator in the city afraid. But Lin Sun was seriously injured and on the verge of death. It could be said that he had no deterrence at all. It was the best time to kill him. If they waited for him to recover, it would be too late. Upon hearing these shouts, Lin Sun turned around. His black eyes were extremely cold, and he quietly glanced at Wu Yuanjin and the other three. Then, he turned around and left. Although it was just a glance, Wu Yuanjin and the other three were shocked and keenly felt the killing intent in Lin Sun's heart. Following that, their faces turned even gloomier. Now that they had all become King Realm cultivators, they could not be compared to the past. Yet, Lin Sun still dared to threaten them. He was simply courting death. Pass down the order. Seal the exit of the immortal burning ancient city. Don't let him escape. Wu Yuanjin roared and gave the order. He was Demon Lin. In the city, the cultivators who had been shocked had confirmed Lin Sun's identity and could not help but be aghast. After being silent for half a year, everyone thought that Lin Sun had long sensed that something was amiss and had left the immortal burning realm with the help of the Pinnacle Pagoda. But who would have thought that he had not left? Moreover, he'd even escaped calamity from the joint attacks of 4 King Realm experts. Demon Lin is still as powerful as ever. Someone sighed. Didn't you hear? He's already seriously injured and on the verge of death. Any random expert's attack now can threaten his life. Someone's eyes flickered. There are many major forces in the city. There's no doubt that they will act immediately to kill Demon Lin once they receive this news. Someone sighed inwardly. Under such circumstances, how could Fiend Celestial Lin possibly survive? He would be attacked by King Realm cultivators if he left the city. He would be like prey trapped in a cage if he stayed in the city. His life would be reaped by the various major forces. Regardless of the outcome, he was linked to death. There were also some cultivators who sensed Lin Sun's departure and hurriedly followed him without leaving a trace. It was obvious that they were up to no good. Everyone knew that Demon Lin had once plundered the treasury of the Golden Crow lineage and killed 26 dazzling figures in Fenshin Valley. Now that he was in a hopeless situation with no way out, it was enough to attract the covetous eyes of those with ill intentions. Lin Sun's speed was not fast. His injuries were too severe and his speed was affected. Even though he had consumed a piece of Thunder Origin's spiritual liquid from the Myriad Tribulation lightning bamboo along the way, and even though he had circulated his undying Tao energy to recover, but his injuries had yet to recover completely. That was because Miao's sword Qi had not only pierced his chest. The King Tao power contained in the sword Qi had also injured his internal organs and the foundation of his cultivation. This was a Tao injury. Even though the Thunder Origin spiritual liquid was extremely miraculous, it was difficult to recover in a short period of time. Taoist Lin, do you need any help? Suddenly, a group of cultivators rushed up from behind with flickering eyes. Of course. Go find the Golden Crow lineage, the Black Sea Dog clan, the Xuandu Taoism sect, and the Sea Soul clan to help me take revenge. How about that? Lin Sun's voice was cold without looking back. The cultivators' expressions changed, but they were still not slow as they chased after him. Someone forced a smile and said, Taoist Lin, you're making things difficult for us. You know that you're on the verge of death. The only thing we can do is to help you take care of your belongings. Yes, when you die, we'll collect your bones and build a tomb for you for the sake of our kindred spirit. At least your corpse won't be exposed in the wilderness. The others spoke successively and seemed to be well-intentioned. However, although they spoke in a dignified manner, they were actually extremely ugly. They completely intended to take advantage of Lin Sun's misfortune and coveted the treasures in Lin Sun's possession. I'll give all of you a chance. Vanish now. Lin Sun had lost his patience, and the killing intent in his heart surged as he issued an ultimatum. A counterattack before death was very terrifying. As soon as Lin Sun said this, the expressions of those cultivators changed. But in the end, they were still unable to resist the greed in their hearts, and they continued to chase after Lin Sun like flies that had smelled blood. Taoist Lin, we have good intentions. Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Someone spoke coldly. Pooh! As soon as he finished speaking, his spirit was suddenly slashed, and his body fell to the ground with a thump. His eyes were wide open as he died on the spot. This caused the others to be horrified, and astounded. Trash like you want to hit on me? If you dare take another step forward, I'll definitely kill all of you. Lin Sun's icy cold and indifferent voice sounded from afar. All of these cultivators had an indeterminate expression, and they were extremely hesitant. Right when they were hesitating, Lin Sun's figure had already vanished into the distance. However, even if they didn't pursue him, it didn't mean that the other cultivators wouldn't. As the saying goes, men die in pursuit of wealth just like birds die in pursuit of food. So how could any expert that had targeted Lin Sun be willing to miss such a superb opportunity? Demonic God Lin, stop right there. Someone shouted loudly. A group of cultivators flashed over from the sky, and they were like vultures that had locked onto their prey and directly attacked. Pooh, pooh, pooh. However, Lin Sun didn't even turn around, yet all of these cultivators fell from the sky and fell to the ground, and they died on the spot. The spirit of every single one of them had been annihilated and wiped out. There was no blood, and no injuries could be seen from the outside, yet this undoubtedly seemed extremely terrifying. How could this be? Some cultivators witnessed this scene from the shadows, and all of them were terrified to the point their scalps went numb while a chill ran down their spines. Demonic God Lin, there's no place for you in this city any longer. If you stay behind now, then perhaps I'll plead on your behalf and guide you to a way out. Not long after, a top expert appeared. It was a young man dressed in luxurious clothes. He was very conceited as he blocked Lin Sun's path. Get lost. Lin Sun's reply was only one word. Moreover, he didn't slow down at all. Then let me send you on your way. The young man's face darkened as he drew out a spiritual sword and slashed down. He wasn't careless, and he used his trump card as soon as he attacked. As soon as the sword was drawn, it was like a starry waterfall soaring into the sky, dazzling and magnificent. He was confident that the seriously injured and dying demonic God Lin was destined to be unable to withstand this strike. But what astonished him was that Lin Sun didn't even make a move from beginning to end, so he naturally couldn't withstand it. At the same time, he felt a tearing pain in his spirit, and his vision turned black. Bang! In an instant, even the soul treasure armor around the Yuan Shun exploded, and a streak of sword light slashed into the Yuan Shun at this moment. Ah! The young man let out an extremely shrill scream that sent chills down one's spine. With a plop, he knelt on the ground, and then his body went limp and he was no longer breathing. Whoosh! At the same time, a figure that was so close to nothingness chased after Lin Sun from his sea of consciousness. This figure was naturally little silver,